Hey guys, tonight we saddle up for a sleepy little ride through one of history's most underappreciated professions, being a postman during China's Tang Dynasty. The year is somewhere around 750 CE, and you're standing in the dim pre-dawn light with a scroll tucked into your belt and a somewhat moody chestnut horse blowing steam into the morning air beside you. The sky is still the color of old rice paper, and your boots are already damp from the dew. Your route stretches out across forests, rivers, mountain passes, and more bureaucracy than any soul could possibly be awake enough for. You're a courier, part of a sprawling imperial system that relies on you to keep things, letters, grain reports, tax decrees moving. No pressure, of course. Your horse snorts, unimpressed by your enthusiasm. Maybe it's because you've named him something poetic like North Wind or Second Brother. But let's be honest, he mostly responds to snacks. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere far-flung or nearby, I'd love to know. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day starts the same as most. Up before dawn, scroll checked twice, and your saddlebags filled with not nearly enough snacks. The local station master gives you a nod, barely looking up from his records. His brush pen scratches softly against the wood of his tally board. You mount up without drama, because drama gets you written up, and start down the packed dirt road that wiggles its way through the early mist. You're riding on what's called the Yichuan Dao, one of the official courier roads of the Tang postal system. It's part of a network that covers thousands of miles, with way stations set every 30 to 40 kilometers or so, enough distance to exhaust your horse, but not your will to live. You'll be expected to ride fast, ride focused, and switch horses at each relay. Your own personal steed? He's more of a starter mount, disposable, if we're being honest, which is probably why he just tried to bite you again. Now about the job. You're not just delivering love letters or noble gossip. You're the fragile thread that ties the empire together. You carry military orders, tax notifications, and sometimes strange, urgent cargo. Once, you knew a guy who had to deliver a live goose with a note tied to its leg. Neither the note nor the goose survived the trip. It was a tense debrief. Your saddle isn't exactly plush. It's made of layered wood, wrapped in leather, and padded just enough to prevent bruises. Maybe. You've layered 2 extra cloths under your seat, but one's slipping, and you don't feel like fixing it just yet. Tang Dynasty mailmen weren't known for their lumbar support, but they were known for being resilient. That's the word people use when they can't offer you a raise. Your gear jingles as you trot past early farmers, setting out baskets of onions and millet. A child waves at you. You wave back, briefly considering throwing them your half-eaten date cake, before remembering that it's your only food until the next station. Sorry, kid. By mid-morning, the sun has burned off most of the fog, and the road gets busier. You pass an ox cart heading in the opposite direction, the driver singing something about bean curd and heartbreak. The road is wide enough here to let you speed up a little, though your horse is already giving you that look. You know the one? It means, I'd rather be back in the stable eating old turnips. Your legs ache, and the muscles in your lower back are composing a list of formal complaints. But the scenery helps. Lush hills roll off into the horizon, dotted with old stone pagodas and the occasional roadside shrine. You pass a few of them without stopping, though you do bow your head briefly at one that's said to protect travelers from saddle blisters. Hey, it can't hurt. You reach your first relay station just as the sun hits its high point. It's a modest structure, half bamboo, half administrative anxiety. A stable boy rushes out before you've even dismounted. He takes one look at your sweaty, unimpressed horse and sighs like he already knows he'll be up late brushing it down. You hand over the lead and dig out your documents. The station clerk, who may or may not have been napping, checks your delivery log and grunts his approval. It's time for your first horse swap. Your next mount is a wiry gray with one ear that doesn't stand up quite right. Perfect. You've always preferred the underdogs. They make fewer demands and seem to understand your tired jokes. As you mount up, you notice something tied to the saddle horn, a small pouch of dried plums, a silent gift from the stable boy, or maybe a leftover from the last courier who forgot them. Either way, you're keeping them. You ride on. The rhythm of hooves becomes almost hypnotic. Birds chirp somewhere overhead, and the scent of pine mixes with the smell of warm horse. You pass a hillside with crumbling ruins, possibly Han Dynasty, possibly just old rocks. Historians still argue whether these were signal towers or just somebody's oddly ambitious goat shed. A sharp turn in the path brings you to a narrow wooden bridge spanning a creek that sings softly to itself. Your horse pauses, unsure. You nudge him gently and whisper the Tang equivalent of, "Come on, buddy, we got scrolls to deliver." On the other side, you pass a stone milestone etched with characters you've seen 100 times before, but this one has a new scratch on it, likely left by another courier. A symbol for watch out, probably. You file that away just in case. Could mean a landslide, a bandit, or just a grumpy official with too many scrolls and too little tea. As the afternoon stretches, your body settles into the familiar aches. Your horse keeps his pace steady, and the sky begins to shift toward the golden tones of early evening. One scroll down, too many to go. But for now, the road is clear, the wind is kind, and your saddle only squeaks when you breathe. The path narrows as you ease the gray horse into a gentle trot. Your thighs are starting to remember what stirrups feel like, too much. The village behind you fades into a blur of tiled roofs and charcoal cook fires, while ahead the road stretches on, lined with willow trees that dance lazily in the breeze, utterly unaware of your growing thirst. Luckily, you're nearing the next Wee John, or postal relay station, and just in time. Your scroll pouch tugs at your waist like it has opinions about punctuality. This particular relay is where the real backbone of the Tang postal system flexes, the famous horse relay system, or Chuanji, a logistical miracle of dusty hooves and overworked stable hands. You spot the red paper marker fluttering on a bamboo pole, subtle but unmistakable. As you pull into the courtyard, you dismount with an audible groan, not from you, from the horse, who has clearly decided he hates this place on principle. The stable boy takes one look at you, the horse, and the sweat stains on your robe, and nods silently, leading the beast away as if to say, "Yep, rookie courier, probably skipped breakfast." You're barely done wiping the dust from your face when the station keeper waves you over. He's all furrowed brow and ink-stained fingers. 3 more scrolls, he mutters, stuffing them into your pouch with the sort of casual aggression only someone who's been copying edicts for 20 years can manage. This is where you learn the relay dance. Ride one horse to exhaustion, pass the message, pick up a fresh horse, and repeat until either the scrolls or your knees give out. The Tang network runs on this choreography. In theory, it's elegant. In practice, it's more like soggy boots, half-heard instructions, and stable gossip. Each station is roughly a day's ride apart, sometimes less if the terrain is difficult or if a certain emperor has been feeling particularly poetic about river crossings. The station's job is to maintain the horses, feed the riders, and, perhaps most importantly, track everything. You sign a board with a brush, scribbling your name and the time. It's checked later. If you're late without a good excuse, you could be docked pay or worse, reassigned to scroll copying duty in Chang'an, which is the historical equivalent of being sentenced to watch paint dry, but with more back pain. Your new horse is a shaggy bay with a slight limp. You raise an eyebrow. The stable boy shrugs. "Freshest one we've got," he says, not even pretending to lie. You sigh, at least it's not raining. Back on the road, the terrain changes. Fewer trees now, more rocky scrubland. You're passing into higher elevation, and the air has that crisp edge that suggests mountain weather is about to toy with your plans. The horse picks up speed once it sees the open plain. You relax your grip on the reins just a little, leaning into the movement. The Chuanji system was, in its heyday, the most efficient communication network in the world, at least according to Tang officials, who also thought peach wine cured melancholy. Still, historians largely agree that the system worked surprisingly well. Relay stations were spaced with maddening precision, placed according to geographic need and administrative paranoia. Horses were rotated frequently to prevent overexertion, though as you now realize, fresh is a flexible word. Each relay had its own reputation. Some were known for their sweet bean cakes, others for the terrifying lady who ran the guest register with military precision. Some were whispered about, said to be haunted by couriers who vanished in the night, or worse, reassigned to accounting. As you crest a small hill, you spot a worn marker stone. It's shaped like a lotus and etched with a phrase, 9 more before rest. Not exactly inspiring, but at least it's honest. You ride on. Midway through the stretch, your horse slows. You feel it under you, the uneven gait, the growing reluctance. You dismount, check his hooves. A small stone lodged near the frog. You pry it out with your hairpin, useful for both fashion and minor veterinary work, and the horse snorts in protest. You walk beside him for a while, letting him recover. The sun dips behind a passing cloud, and the wind picks up. The silence here is thick, broken only by the soft clink of your gear and the occasional hawk cry above. You pull out one of the dried plums from earlier. It's hard and sour and absolutely perfect. As you walk, your mind drifts. You remember something you overheard at the last station, a debate between 2 junior clerks about whether a relay station in the western provinces had ever received mail via camel. Historians still argue whether the Tang actually integrated camels into the official system, or whether that was just artistic license taken by an overly ambitious muralist. Either way, you're grateful not to be managing a camel right now. Too many teeth, you remount and continue. The path dips and twists, leading into a small pine grove. It's darker here, quieter. You pass a roadside shrine with a small pile of fresh peaches beneath it, an offering for safe passage, probably. You bow your head again. You never know who's listening. Finally, just as your horse starts breathing like an asthmatic bellows, the next station comes into view. It's a simple structure, tiled roof, smoke rising from a side hut, and a bored-looking official scratching his scalp with a quill. You're 2 stations in, and already your knees feel like pickled bamboo shoots. But the message is still intact. Your gear is holding, and your second horse hasn't thrown you. All things considered, not a bad start. And so, you ride on. The road waits. The next station draws closer, and your third horse, who may or may not be allergic to oats, awaits with all the enthusiasm of a tired uncle at a tea ceremony. You swing your leg over the saddle again with a grunt that's becoming less ironic and more just, audible. The third horse is a curious-looking mare with patches of white on her legs and a habit of snorting whenever someone says the word scroll. You try not to take it personally. As she starts into a trot, the road opens wide, and a row of poplar trees line the path like sleepy sentries. Your robes flap softly with each rhythmic step. Somewhere nearby, a small irrigation canal bubbles its way through a rice field. You can smell wet earth, sesame oil from a distant cook fire, and the faint, ever-present scent of horse. It's time to talk about your look, your uniform. And let's just say, you're not winning any fashion awards. The Tang Postal Service provides you with a standardized outfit, meant more for function than flair. A thick hemp tunic, dyed with what was once probably indigo, now faded into something between stormy laundry water and pigeon. Your trousers are bound at the ankles with string, and your boots, while sturdy, squeak with every 5th step like a mildly offended duck. There's a reason people didn't write love poems to couriers. The mail badge you wear, a small wooden token, marks you as an official postal worker. It's not fancy, but it holds weight. You flash that token at way stations, temples, ferry crossings. It lets you bypass checkpoints, and on a good day, earns you a free dumpling or at least a nod from a gatekeeper. Just don't lose it. One courier dropped his in a latrine pit and tried to retrieve it with a bamboo ladle. They say he still smells faintly of vinegar. Your robe has extra padding over the shoulders for saddle rub, and the hem is weighted slightly with pebbles to keep it from flapping wildly in the wind. Smart design, honestly. It's the Tang Dynasty equivalent of performance gear, just with more stitching and fewer endorsements. You pass a pair of farmers hauling bundles of firewood. They nod at you, and you nod back, instinctively checking that your scroll pouch is still secure. It is, nestled under a fold of your outer robe. Wrapped in oil-treated silk, the scrolls are safe from rain but not from accidents, like that time someone dropped theirs in a soup pot at a relay inn. A full week's worth of poetry, seasoned with fish broth. As the sun begins its slow descent, you notice the quality of the road is changing. It's smoother here, evidence that this stretch sees heavier traffic. That's because you're passing near a market town, though not through it. Postal routes often curve around towns to avoid congestion, gossip, and the temptation of steamed buns. You sigh. Steamed buns would hit the spot right now. You adjust your belt, tugging your robe tighter. The fabric is breathable, but after 3 horses and too many scrolls, it's starting to feel more like a weighted blanket made of itchy leaves. Somewhere along this stretch, you come across a small carved milestone, worn smooth by time. You lean down from the saddle, squinting. Faint characters, maybe a year, maybe a haiku, maybe someone trying to practice their brushstrokes on rock. Historians still debate the purpose of such markers. Some say they were official guideposts. Others think they were just the ancient version of Bob was here. You trot onward, deeper into rural territory. Fewer carts, more birdsong, the occasional flicker of a rabbit vanishing into a bush. Your uniform begins to feel heavier as sweat settles in all the predictable places. You think briefly about the fact that some elite couriers, usually military, got lighter, silk-lined uniforms. But those were for urgent imperial messages, not your humble batch of mid-tier bureaucratic scrolls, 2 of which are suspiciously damp and possibly smell like pickled radish. As you round a bend, the wind shifts. You catch the scent of juniper and something stronger. Hoarse, but not your own. You're nearing another outpost. This one's smaller. Not a full relay station, but a rest stop called a Bianjan, meant for quick breaks, minor gear checks, and sometimes exchanging uniforms or spare saddle parts. A middle-aged woman in a brown smock waves from the porch, where she's drying herbs on bamboo trays. She gestures toward a low bench shaded by hanging gourds. You dismount, grateful for the stretch. She hands you a ladle of water, cold and fresh from a nearby stream, and wordlessly points to a wooden pole where a few spare garments are drying. You spy a tunic that might be 1 size less itchy than yours, and she nods when you point to it. An unofficial trade. Yours has 3 tiers and a smell that can only be described as traveling monk. As you change, you notice your arms are tanned unevenly, and your legs have that weary ache that suggests you'll be dreaming about saddles again. You hang your old robe on the line, next to one that looks suspiciously like it was once white, but now leans toward soup gray. The woman, still silent, offers a shallow bowl of dried jujubes. You chew one slowly, savoring the sticky sweetness, as your horse drinks from a trough. A hen clucks under the bench, pecking at crumbs from someone's earlier snack. Back in the saddle, fresh tunic, slightly less itchy, you make your way toward the next relay, the path gently sloping downward. The rhythm of the horse's gait returns. The road is quiet. You spot a pheasant in the brush and a hawk wheeling overhead, calling out once before vanishing into the sky. It's in these moments that your mind drifts again, this time to the scrolls themselves. What do they say? You'll never know. Opening one is a serious offense, but sometimes you guess. A military order, a tax notice, a letter of marriage, or perhaps just a request for more ink. Once, a courier you met claimed he was carrying a poem written by the emperor himself, 14 lines of longing about a plum blossom and an old sandal. Truth? Probably not. But it's fun to imagine. The sky has turned to amber now, and the shadows stretch long and sleepy across the fields. You pull your robe tighter, feeling the cool bite of evening air on your cheeks. The scent of pine and smoke returns. Somewhere, someone's cooking rice, and it smells better than anything you've eaten in a week. Your third horse slows naturally, tired but steady. You pat her neck gently, whisper a thank you under your breath. She snorts, maybe at you, maybe at the world. It's hard to tell with horses. The next station is just over the ridge, marked by the soft glow of a lantern swinging from a crooked post. You feel your shoulders relax. Another stretch done, another change ahead. You guide your horse onward, your shadow merging with hers in the fading light. The station lantern flickers as you approach, its orange glow a small miracle against the darkening sky. You dismount slowly, knees popping like overused abacuses. The fourth horse of your journey will be waiting just beyond the stable gate. But for now, you allow yourself a breath. 1, maybe 2. The relay station here is slightly larger, nestled against a small hill where pine trees huddle like gossiping monks. The walls are mud brick with a timber frame, and from the inside comes the sound of someone whistling badly, accompanied by a steady scraping noise, probably someone sharpening a writing stylus far too dramatically. A tall young man in a too-short robe meets you at the gate, chewing something that smells vaguely of pickled garlic. He's the assistant stable master, and he seems unimpressed by both your horse and your face. Still, protocol is protocol. He checks your courier badge, sniffs once, and waves you through with a lazy flick. "You'll want to get that saddle off," he mutters. "The straps are fraying." You thank him with a nod, already halfway to the hitching post. The mare sighs in relief. She's done her job and done it well. Inside the stable, you're greeted by a small chorus of snorts, whinnies, and one curious goat who's clearly gotten lost but refuses to leave. The smell is familiar. Hay, manure, tired leather, and something minty you can't quite place. It's maybe one of the horses is on herbal supplements. You hope they're sharing. Tonight, you're getting the red stallion. That's what the roster says, and the assistant stable master confirms it with a grunt and a gesture. Careful with him. He thinks he's a general. The stallion is tall, muscular, and eyeing you like he's reading your performance reviews. But before you mount, you take care of your current steed. You brush her down, a gentle routine that gives both of you a moment to exhale. You work the knots from her mane, wipe down her flanks, and whisper your thanks. Even if she did try to bite a gourd on the last leg and nearly took your hand with it. Then it's saddle swap time. You adjust the girth strap. This one's leather, worn but treated with sesame oil to keep it supple, and do a quick check of the reins, bits, and stirrups. You even sneak a glance at the saddle padding, and yes, it's slightly better than what you've been riding with. You almost smile. Let's pause for a moment and appreciate the unsung complexity of Tang horse gear. Saddles were layered, wooden frames, padded cushions, and leather covers, all tied together with a series of loops, straps, and mostly hope. You also carry a rolled mat, a spare halter, and a tiny leather pouch of tools, all twine, a bit of beeswax, and your favorite, 2 dried plum pits for luck. You mount the red stallion carefully, waiting for the inevitable test. He does a little sidestep shuffle, considers spooking, then decides you're not worth the energy. Good. Mutual respect. You ride out as the last of the sunset clings to the clouds like orange silk on a laundry line. It's now evening proper, and your next leg will take you through a quieter, less traveled section of the route. The path narrows again, winding through wooded lowlands where willow branches droop like sleepy eyelids. Crickets hum. Your horse's hooves make that soft thup 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 against the packed earth. You shift in your saddle, tucking your robe tighter against the night chill. This is where you lean into routine, the rhythm of the horse, the jingle of gear, the occasional owl making you question your career choices. Your body aches in all the usual places. You wonder if any Tang physicians ever wrote about Postman's knee. Probably not. Though one text did suggest boiled duck feet and mulberry sap for joint stiffness. You tried it once, regretted it deeply. As you round a bend, a soft splash reaches your ears. A narrow stream cuts across the road, shallow and calm. You guide the stallion through it slowly, the water barely reaching his fetlocks. Still, you feel the cool seep through your boots. Refreshing, if slightly squelchy. On the other side of the stream, you spot something tied to a low branch. Strips of red paper fluttering in the breeze. Relay code. You lean in and read the scribbles. Loose stone past second hill. Watch right flank. Cryptic? Absolutely. But these messages, often left by couriers, stable hands, or bored monks with access to red ink, form an unofficial language of survival and shared experience. Historians still argue whether such messages were sanctioned or simply tolerated because they made things work. You tap the horse's flank gently and continue. Another hill rises before you, the path lined with firefly flickers and the occasional croaking frog chorus. It's beautiful in a tired, slightly itchy kind of way. You begin humming, a tune picked up from another courier weeks ago. Something about noodles and doomed love. It passes the time. Then, just before the next ascent, you hear hooves, not yours. From behind, maybe a relay delay catching up, or another courier. You glance back, but see nothing. The red stallion flicks his ears, unconcerned. You press forward. Moments later, you pass a stone milestone, half hidden in moss. It's carved with the character for swift, and someone's scratched in a smiley face. You nod at it, encouragement from the past. The road dips once more, and you descend into a moonlit valley. Small terraces line the hillsides, and the scent of growing rice fills the air. You pass a farmhouse tucked under a stand of trees, windows glowing with the faint orange of oil lamps. Somewhere inside, a lute plays a soft, wandering melody. You keep your distance. Couriers aren't supposed to stop here. Too many stories of scrolls going missing or couriers going native. There was one guy who allegedly fell in love with a tofu maker's daughter and forgot to deliver a tax report. They say the entire village was fined 5 goats, but you just ride on, quiet as a shadow, letting the rhythm carry you toward the next point in the relay chain. The scrolls at your side are safe. Your horse is strong. Your gear, for once, isn't digging into your ribs. And though your stomach reminds you you've only had one jujube today, your spirits are surprisingly high. One more relay behind you. One more night road conquered. Ahead, the silhouette of a pine gate marks your next destination. The lantern isn't lit yet, but you can see faint light flickering inside. You sit straighter in the saddle. The red stallion picks up his pace. You're still in the game. The gate creaks as you push it open, the red stallion's hooves clicking softly on the stone-paved courtyard. This station is older than the last, built of dark timber, its beams warped slightly with age and moisture. The place smells like damp moss, soybeans, and horse sweat. So, home, basically. A lantern sputters to life near the doorway as a boy, perhaps 12 years old, and wearing sleeves too long for his arms, steps out with a half-eaten rice ball in hand. He regards you with the solemnity of someone who has seen too many tired riders arrive at odd hours. "They said you'd be here before moonrise," he mumbles, pointing to the stable with his rice ball. "You're late, but not the worst today." You dismount and toss him the reins. "He's all yours. Don't let him bully you." "He already tried," the boy replies, deadpan, as he tugs the red stallion toward a water trough. The horse resists slightly, but eventually goes along, likely sensing there's hay at the end of this indignity. Inside the station, you're offered a bowl of thin barley porridge and half a steamed yam. The station steward, a stocky man with hair like a startled pigeon, watches you eat like he's waiting for you to thank him with a haiku. You oblige by nodding deeply and mumbling something about the yam tasting pleasantly earthy, which earns you a grunt and a refill. Now fullish and slightly less dusty, you head outside again to select your next horse, a step you no longer trust anyone else to handle. You wander past the stalls, sizing up your options. One horse is dozing in a pile of hay, one is too small, and another looks like he's planning to file a complaint with the Ministry of Equine Labor. But then you see him, a compact black gelding, muscular, with sharp eyes and a saddle already fitted. His name, scratched into the stall post in uneven calligraphy, is Stone Bell. You like that. Sounds dependable, if a bit dramatic. You check the gear yourself. Saddle straps tight, bit well placed, hooves clean. The stirrups are a little high, but nothing a quick adjustment can't fix. You swing onto his back, and Stone Bell barely flicks an ear. Good sign. The sort of calm only comes from experience, or complete apathy. The steward gives you a scroll pouch to add to your collection. "This one goes all the way to Yuquan Gate," he says. "High priority, but not sealed. Try not to drop it in a river." Noted. You set off again under the rising moon. It's quiet now, the kind of quiet that makes you wonder if sound has just stopped. The black gelding trots confidently, hooves muffled on the softer dirt of this stretch. You pass between rows of bamboo that whisper against each other in the breeze. Shadows lean long and delicate over the road. This part of the path runs straight for several li. The road surface here is smoother than earlier, probably thanks to recent repairs. You remind yourself to be thankful for the countless laborers who laid these roads stone by stone. You imagine one of them, bent under a hot sun, cursing every courier who'd one day ride over his work and not even slow down to admire the craftsmanship. You do, briefly, just to be polite. Along this stretch, you start to notice the stone mile markers more frequently. Small rectangular blocks, many half covered in moss or worn smooth by time and weather. Every so often, one still bears legible writing, distance to the next relay, a warning about terrain, or a carved joke left by a bored artisan. One simply reads, "Don't trust the soup at Wang's." Intriguing. You pass another station outpost, this one closed for the night, its paper screens shut tight. A single oil lamp glows behind the shutters. You ride on, letting the cool air and rhythmic clop of hooves lull your thoughts into a kind of traveling meditation. Your fingers rest on the scroll pouch from the last station. You resist the urge to guess what's inside. A rustling in the trees catches your ear. You glance to the side. Just a deer, or a courier with stage fright. Hard to tell in the dark. Soon the road becomes more rugged again. The elevation shifts, the incline pulling at your legs, and Stone Bell breathes harder now, though he maintains his pace like a true professional. You lean forward slightly in the saddle, adjusting your weight to make the climb easier. There's a rhythm to this. Lean, sway, balance, breathe. And then you see them, 4 stone pillars on either side of the path, spaced evenly and capped with lion-like beasts. You've reached the old marker gates, not an official boundary, but a sign you're entering an older part of the route. This stretch predates the Tang Dynasty by centuries. You recall a rumor that the stones were once part of a Han-era spirit road, lined with statues meant to guide souls rather than scrolls. Historians still argue whether the route's reuse was practical or symbolic, but here you are, guided by moonlight and ancient lions who've seen more lost messages than you ever will. The climb flattens and a mist begins to settle, thick and slow. You tighten your cloak. Visibility dips, but Stone Bell seems unfazed. He keeps to the center of the road, guided by some unseen instinct, or maybe he's just done this so many times, he could sleep through it. You pass another red marker on a tree, but this one's torn, dangling by a thread. You pause to read what's left. "Do not" is all that remains. Encouraging. The path curves to the right, edging around a small ravine. You guide your mount carefully, leaning left to stay balanced. Your fingers brush the scrolls at your hip, reminding you that despite the late hour, the mission's still on. Then you spot a flicker ahead, another station. Faint candlelight, the silhouette of a half-dozing clerk sitting cross-legged on the porch, brush in hand, drooping over an unfinished page. You smile slightly. Another checkpoint, another exchange, another horse. But for now, it's just you, Stone Bell, and the scrolls tucked safely away, moving quietly through a stretch of history that, while mostly forgotten, carries the echoes of every hoofbeat before yours. The clerk on the porch doesn't look up as you approach, not at first. He's deep in that foggy state between brushstroke and dream, his ink drying into delicate spiderwebs on the paper. You clear your throat gently. He startles upright, nearly knocking over his inkstone. "Ah, yes, courier. Of course. You're expected." His eyes, puffy with sleep, scan your badge, then the scroll pouch, then you. He checks a tally board hanging from the post, squints, and finally waves you through like he's performing a ceremony in slow motion. You dismount, stretch your legs, and pat Stone Bell's flank. He shakes out his mane and stares off into the mist like he's composing poetry in his head. You hand off the pouch for recording, resisting the urge to peek inside one of the scrolls. The clerk fumbles with the seal and gently adds another scroll, this one in a green silk wrap with a wooden ring attached. "Careful with this one," he mutters. It's got a wax tablet enclosed. Imperial census notes. They'll want that intact. Census scrolls. Wonderful. The most thrilling of all government paperwork. But important? The Tang Dynasty's bureaucracy ran on information, grain tallies, household registers, livestock accounts. Without couriers, entire provinces might think they owed taxes in goats instead of rice, and no one wants a surprise herd showing up at the treasury. Inside the station, a young girl is fanning a clay stove, heating what looks like bean porridge. She offers you a bowl with minimal ceremony, and you accept, grateful. It's warm, bland, and oddly comforting. Your knees pop again as you sit on the step. The station cat, orange and obviously in charge, jumps into your lap without asking. You let him stay. You eat in silence for a few minutes, watching the mist curl around the eaves of the building. Then you rise, bow politely, and prepare for the next leg. Your new horse is already waiting. A pale brown gelding with a black stripe down his back and unusually fluffy ears. You decide to call him Sesame, even if that's not his real name. He seems like the type who wouldn't object. Back on the road, the mist thickens, and the moon plays hide and seek behind drifting clouds. The path narrows again, winding between stands of bamboo and the occasional mossy boulder. Your boots are damp, your shoulders tight from the previous stretch, but you settle into the rhythm of the ride. Sesame's gait is steady and sure, the kind that lets your mind wander just a bit, which is dangerous, because that's when you start thinking about courier superstitions. Every profession has them. For Tang Dynasty postmen, they range from the mildly amusing to the utterly bizarre. One common belief: never look directly at a wild fox during a delivery. Supposedly, it confuses your sense of direction. Another says, you must never whistle before dawn, or you'll summon a lost message from the underworld. You once heard a story of a courier who laughed at those tales until he tried to take a shortcut past a graveyard and ended up arriving 3 days late, speaking in rhyming couplets and unable to eat ginger ever again. Historians, for their part, debate how much of this was genuine belief versus just clever excuses for being late. Sorry, I missed the relay handoff. Had to circle a shrine 3 times to keep the scroll from being cursed. Try arguing with that logic. You pass a wayside shrine around midnight. It's tiny, more a weathered stone platform than a structure, with a carved tiger on one side and what looks like a small peach offering on the other. You slow Sesame to a walk and bow your head briefly. Not because you're superstitious, of course, just respectful. The road flattens, and you pass a dry creek bed lined with white stones. The moonlight makes them glow faintly, like a path laid out by forgotten ancestors. You hum a little tune to keep your energy up, something an old courier taught you. Saddle tight and scrolls in place. Ride the wind and leave no trace. Catchy, in an extremely utilitarian sort of way. Ahead, a clearing opens around a twisted pine tree, bent sideways like it's bowing toward the earth. You remember this place. It's known as Wind Follower Curve. Legend says it's where a Tang official's horse refused to move until the wind changed direction. The official took it as a sign and delayed his journey and narrowly avoided riding into a rebel ambush. Historians still argue whether the story is true or just a tale someone made up to explain why the courier trail makes such an odd detour right here. Either way, You follow the curve, no sense tempting fate. The silence here is deeper than before, pressed down by pine needles and time. You hear your own breath, the creak of the saddle, the occasional snort from sesame. The moon breaks free of the clouds for a moment, illuminating a pair of foxes darting across the path ahead. You freeze. Don't look at them directly. You peek sideways. One glances back. Your heart skips, but you keep your focus on the road. No sudden turns, no shortcuts, just ride. After a few minutes, the path widens again, the trees thinning. In the distance, you spot lantern glow, dim, steady, familiar. A rest station? Not a relay, just a simple traveler's hut, run by an old couple who've likely seen more couriers pass than the emperor has officials. You pull up to the gate, dismounting with the grace of someone who's definitely lost all sensation in their thighs. The man greets you with a quiet nod, gestures to the small trough, and motions for you to follow. You do, stepping inside the warm hut, where his wife is already ladling out hot barley tea. You sit, stretch, and accept the steaming cup with both hands. The walls are lined with scrolls, gifts, messages, doodles left by passing riders. One is a rather good sketch of a horse, with enormous ears, labeled Sesame the Brave. Another reads, in spidery calligraphy, to deliver a message is to move the world. You sip your tea. The night deepens, but your route continues. You will not stop, not yet. You finish your tea, thank your hosts, and step back into the cool air. Sesame is waiting, already turned toward the next bend. You mount up and ride forward, the world narrowing once more to hoofbeats, scrolls, and a path paved with fading stories. The road ahead is softer now, padded with moss and the sort of pine needles that swallow sound like secrets. You and Sesame glide through it like whispers in a dream. The moon, high but drowsy, casts shadows that ripple along the roadside, and your breath hangs in the air like tiny silk threads drifting behind you. This stretch is longer than most between stations, a deliberate gap known as the messenger's silence. The name isn't official, of course. It comes from the couriers themselves, passed down like an inside joke, only funny when you're halfway through it on an empty stomach. It's a corridor of calm between more densely settled provinces, a place where nothing happens except everything that makes the job real. Sesame's hooves are rhythmic, deliberate, the sound a comfort and a lullaby. You reach down, adjust the strap on your scroll pouch. It started to bite into your ribs, and shift in the saddle. There's a thin fog clinging to the road, thickening in dips, thinning on ridges. The perfect kind for daydreams and phantom travelers. You remember what another courier once told you during a long, rainy handoff at a wine-sour station. This leg's where people start talking to their horses like they're wives or gods or both. You glance down at Sesame. Don't get any ideas, you mutter. He flicks an ear. You take that as agreement. The path curves past an old cypress tree, gnarled and split down the middle by lightning decades ago. Its hollow trunk now hosts a nest of white-feathered birds. They rustle softly as you pass, like they are warning the forest that mail is coming. The Tang bureaucracy didn't mess around when it came to communication. If the emperor wanted something delivered, it went. Over rivers, deserts, bandit territories, and stretches like this, silent, forested, and beautifully dull. Couriers were given wide latitude and immense responsibility. You were the human vein carrying information from one beating heart of the empire to another. And the empire had many hearts. Still, you can't help but laugh, softly, as Sesame suddenly stops, ears forward. A squirrel skitters across the path with all the importance of a regional governor. Let him pass, you murmur. He probably has an edict to deliver. Sesame snorts, probably sarcastically. You coax him forward and begin the climb. The terrain ahead slopes gently upward, not steep enough to challenge the horse, but just noticeable enough to make your legs start wondering when they became furniture. You rise slightly in the stirrups to relieve the pressure. The breeze here carries a hint of wood smoke, and soon you see it. A faint flicker of firelight in a stone brazier by the roadside. It marks the halfway hut. Not a station, just a waymark. 3 stone walls, a slanted tile roof, and a small fire already built and gently crackling. There's no attendant, no paperwork, just the unspoken understanding. If you've made it this far, you're welcome to rest your bones. You tie Sesame loosely to the post, letting him drink from the water basin. The wind plays with his mane while you stretch your arms toward the fire. There's a small basket inside, left by the last courier, dried pears, 2 walnuts, and half a flatbread. You take a single pear, carve off a sliver with your knife, and leave the rest. The code is clear. Take what you need, leave what you can. As the fire crackles, your eyes begin to droop, but you don't dare sleep, not fully. Napping at a halfway hut is tempting, but risky. Miss a sunrise, and you'll be explaining your delay to a scribe with the patience of wet cement. So you sit, sip water from your flask, and pull your cloak tighter. In the stillness, you hear every sound, frogs in a distant stream, the wind dancing through trees, Sesame softly chewing something that's probably not food. Eventually, your internal alarm clock, a finely honed mechanism built on years of fear and saddle soreness, nudges you up. You throw some ash over the fire, untie Sesame, and remount. The saddle feels colder now, your back stiffer. Your spirit, mildly skeptical about the life choices that led here. Still, you ride on. The road shifts again, flattening out, the fog beginning to lift. The darkness feels less heavy here, the shadows thinner. You pass another shrine, this one larger, with carved dragons guarding the base. A red cloth flutters from the roof, tied with 9 knots. It's said that if you whisper your journey's destination to the cloth, the winds will clear your path. You don't dismount, but you whisper it anyway. No one's listening, except Sesame, and maybe the shrine. You pass under an arch of hanging vines. They're green, now blue-gray in the moonlight, and the trees begin to thin. In the distance, you spot faint lanterns, a cluster of them, swaying like sleepy fireflies. A station, at last. This one is older, built of stone and set into a hillside. You guide Sesame through the outer gate, passing a row of lanterns shaped like lotus blossoms. Inside, 2 figures wait, one half asleep on a bench, the other scribbling at a desk that's clearly too small for him. They greet you with nods and one raised hand, motioning for the pouch. You slide off Sesame, bones cracking like rice crackers, and hand over the scrolls with the casual reverence of a monk presenting sacred texts. The clerk opens the pouch, checks the seal, and nods approvingly. "Good pace," he murmurs. "The last courier dropped his scrolls in a ditch and had to fish them out with a noodle spoon." You manage a grin, offer Sesame's reins to the stable hand, and stretch your arms overhead until your spine audibly complains. Inside, you're offered warm water with ginger and a small rice ball dotted with pickled plum. You eat, sip, and let your shoulders drop. The candlelight flickers gently, casting dancing shadows against the clay walls. You feel like one of those shadows, thin, flickering, half carried by the wind. There's no bed here, but a pile of folded mats in the corner suggests that rest, while not luxurious, is allowed. You consider lying down, just for a minute, but no. One more relay ahead before sunrise. You check your belt, your pouch, your boots. Everything is in place. Just one more leg tonight. You glance at Sesame. He's already dozing. You smile faintly, whisper your thanks, and step outside to meet the next beast of burden, probably something with a suspicious eye and a love for uphill paths. The road doesn't wait, neither do the scrolls, and so, saddle up, take a deep breath, and ride on. You're greeted by your next ride with the kind of energy that says, "I don't hate you, but don't push it." The horse is tall, speckled gray with intelligent eyes, and a tail that swishes with authority. His name, you're told, is Wind Knows Nothing. Naturally, because why would any part of your job have a simple name like Dusty or Beans? The stable hand, a short man with eyebrows like tangled brushwood, pats the horse's flank and murmurs. He likes uphill, loathes puddles. You nod like this is perfectly normal information. It is for a Tang courier. Once mounted, you guide Wind Knows Nothing out of the station's gate and into the night once more. The fog has lifted, replaced with a high breeze that rustles the treetops and scatters pine needles across the road. It's a strangely invigorating moment. Your back still aches, and your wrists are stiff, but your eyes feel clearer, and your breath deeper. Maybe it's the ginger tea, or maybe it's just your body realizing there are only a few more relays before sunrise. You press your heels gently and let Wind Knows Nothing take the lead. He responds with a trot so smooth it almost feels smug. This stretch of the journey takes you across higher ground, an upland road that cuts along a series of ridges. Below to your left, the valley glows faintly with scattered village lanterns, each one a tiny warm heartbeat. To your right, the black shape of the mountains looms, vast and unmoving. The wind carries scents of pine, baked earth, and faint whiffs of cooking oil from faraway homes where people are asleep or preparing for the morning market. You start humming again, a low tune you don't remember learning. It's just part of the road now. The Tang Dynasty valued high ridgelines for many postal routes like this. Elevation gave better visibility, firmer ground during monsoons, and conveniently fewer ambush points. Though the term fewer is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Banditry was a thing, especially during years when regional governors decided to raise taxes a little too enthusiastically. Couriers weren't armed soldiers, but they often carried a short staff or a hidden knife. You check yours briefly, tucked behind the left stirrup, still snug in its scabbard, hopefully just a formality. The wind whistles louder now, like it's trying to remember a tune it once knew. You pass a weathered milestone, bearing the symbol of the Ministry of Works, an ox carrying scrolls on its back. You nod at it. Always good to have friends in low relief stone. Around the next bend, you reach the famed ridge known as Three Echoes. It's named for a peculiar quirk of the land. Shout once, and the sound bounces back 3 times, each one fainter than the last. You tried it once during training, got scolded for waking the wood spirits. You weren't sure if they were joking, but you've never done it again. Tonight, the ridge is quiet. The only echoes are of hoofbeats and the occasional sneeze from Wind Knows Nothing, who clearly found a flower he didn't approve of. Then you see it, the remnants of an old beacon tower rising on the hilltop ahead. These towers once formed a vast early warning network across the empire, flame by night, smoke by day, messages carried skyward rather than in saddlebags. The one before you is a crumbling shell, but still stands, defiantly watching over the road. You dismount briefly, curiosity piqued. You climb the hill on foot, boots scraping against gravel, and reach the tower's base. There, carved into the old brick, are dozens of courier names, some in formal script, some in hasty scratches. You recognize none, but you feel connected to all of them. Someone has even added a poem. May your scrolls stay dry, your saddle firm, may horses trust your hand, and roads not turn. You smile faintly, tracing the characters with your gloved hand. You leave a small stone at the base, as is tradition, then return to your steed. Wind Knows Nothing neighs softly, impatient. You apologize, because at this point, your relationship has evolved to the kind where you apologize to horses. A lot. Back in the saddle, you descend from the ridge. The road levels out briefly before dipping into a shallow forest pass. Here, the air thickens again, not with mist, but with the scent of flowering osmanthus and damp bark. A creek gurgles somewhere nearby, its path hidden but loud. You ride slower now, letting the night cradle you a little. Suddenly, movement ahead. 2 figures emerge from the shadows, cloaked, hunched. Your hand moves instinctively toward your saddle knife, but then one of the figures raises a lantern and calls out in a nasal voice. Courier, you exhale, relay guards. This checkpoint is new, one of the recently added ones after a brief spike in, shall we say, scroll misplacement. The guards check your badge, log your scroll weight. Yes, weight. They've started measuring, and nod you along. Watch for mudslides ahead. One warns. Last courier had to backtrack uphill. He was not pleased. Neither was his horse, the other adds with a smirk. You thank them and ride forward into the narrowing trail, now edged with steep ditches and twisted tree roots. This part of the road was once wider, but a series of earthquakes years back shifted the landscape. The government repaired it as best they could, but nature has a way of reminding everyone who's in charge. You duck low branches, let Wind Knows Nothing pick his own pace, and keep your eyes on the ridgeline. The stars above are clearer now, constellations winking down like smug observers. Historians still debate whether the Tang postal routes were originally laid with help from astrologers. Some say yes, that the paths were aligned with lucky stars and imperial omens. Others say the roads were simply drawn between towns and hoped for the best. Either way, you're grateful for the stars tonight. They help guide your way as the trees thin and the terrain flattens once more. You spot distant light ahead, a station, finally, tucked beside a patch of terraced farmland. Smoke curls gently from its chimney. You pat Wind Knows Nothing's neck. Almost there. He tosses his head like finally. The station is small, but cozy, clearly recently refurbished. You're greeted by a steward who recognizes your badge and offers a tin mug of warm rice broth without asking. You sip it slowly, letting the heat fill you from your boots upward. Inside, you're allowed to sit for a moment, just a moment, before the next scroll pouch is brought out. 2 documents this time, one wax-sealed, one with a wooden tag, Imperial Tax Route Correction. You stifle a sigh. More bureaucratic poetry. You stretch your shoulders, adjust your cloak, and glance at the waiting stall. Another horse, another leg, another ridge in the night. But the road keeps calling, and you're still answering. By the time you finish your rice broth, your muscles have begun to loosen, reluctantly acknowledging the temporary warmth. The station is hushed, lit by 2 oil lamps, swaying ever so slightly with the night wind sneaking in through cracked roof tiles. A sleepy clerk hands you a wrapped rice triangle for the road, stuffed with pickled turnip from the smell, and says without irony, "It'll either help you or haunt you." You pocket it anyway. At this hour, you'll take your chances. Your new horse is a dappled mare named Quiet Moon. Her eyes are half-lidded, as though she too had planned to be asleep by now, but she accepts your presence with a flick of her tail and a soft snort that sounds distinctly like, "Let's just get this over with." The saddle is a bit too snug, but the padding feels new. Someone must have restuffed it recently. You mount carefully, not wanting to wake the mare too quickly, and adjust your scroll pouch to rest just under your left arm. The wax-sealed document shifts heavily inside, like a sleeping cat made of responsibility. Back onto the trail. This stretch wanes gently downhill, a quiet forested descent toward one of the larger trade towns in the region. Not that you'll reach the town, just skim past it. Couriers weren't usually allowed to enter major markets without specific permission. Too many chances to get delayed by distractions like dumplings or poetry readings, or worst of all, questions from scholars. Still, even from a distance, the influence of the town reaches out. The road is better paved here, wider. You pass farmers' walls built from old tile shards, each embedded with family crests. The moonlight bounces off glazed ceramic like flickering stars beneath your boots. You and Quiet Moon fall into a steady rhythm, her gait smooths, your breathing in sync with the distant chirp of crickets and the occasional hoot of a watchful owl. Somewhere far off, you hear the clank of a temple bell, either marking the hour or, if you believe the local tales, warning spirits that a courier is near. Because yes, believe it or not, there were places in Tang, China, where people believed couriers carried not just scrolls, but omens. You were seen as travelers between realms, city and village, court and wilderness, day and night, and sometimes between the worlds of the living and the not quite. Historians still argue whether this reputation came from genuine awe or just the way couriers always seemed exhausted and talked to their horses like they were old friends from past lives. The moon dips slightly now, casting the path ahead into longer, gentler shadows. You pass a resting spot carved into the side of a hill marked by a tiny red flag. These roadside seats, sometimes just worn stones or shaped logs, were placed every few li for elderly travelers or overburdened oxen. You consider stopping just for a moment, but Quiet Moon picks up her pace like she's read your thoughts and disapproves. All right then. A low wall soon appears on your right, part of an aqueduct system leading down to the market fields. It's made of fitted stone blocks and mortar made with crushed shells, according to one stonemason who once tried to lecture you for 45 minutes about architectural grit ratios while you were just trying to water your horse. You spot a fox darting across the wall, vanishing into the underbrush. Another courier superstition tickles your brain. 3 foxes before sunrise means you'll forget someone's name by noon. You mentally check off that you've seen one, possibly 2. Best not to count too carefully. The road narrows again near a wooden archway adorned with silk streamers left from a recent holiday, probably the Mid-Autumn Festival. Some are still fluttering, caught in branches, dyed in reds and yellows, clinging to memory. You pass beneath them, letting one graze your shoulder like a blessing. Here, the path diverges. One branch curves left toward the main road, the other, a narrower trail marked by a stone carved with the character for fast, is for couriers only. You turn Quiet Moon down the right fork, and she doesn't hesitate. This shortcut is rocky but saves time, especially when speed means everything, or at least when people believe it does. You ride through a dense bamboo grove. The stalks close in, tall and swaying, clacking gently in the wind like 1,000 people politely disagreeing. Your lantern bobs from your saddle horn, casting long lines of light that weave between green and shadow. A flash of movement up ahead. A deer? No, something smaller. A civet cat, maybe. You don't startle. These woods are known for their wildlife. Once another courier told you he was chased for a full lass by a goose with anger issues and a firm grasp on territorial law. Quiet Moon stumbles slightly, just a misstep on loose gravel, and you grip the reins tighter, murmuring reassurance. She steadies quickly. You pat her neck and check the scroll pouch again, as if the act might somehow reinforce the seals through sheer attention. Ahead, the trail opens into a wide clearing framed by low stone benches and 3 half-burned torches, an unofficial rest circle once used by a traveling poetry society, if the gossip is true. You dismount, stretch briefly, and chew a corner of the rice triangle. Pickled turnip was in fact a bold choice. You take a moment to breathe, listening to the rustle of bamboo and the hiss of wind moving through unseen cracks in the trees. No birds now. Even they have gone quiet. The night is at its deepest, and your body knows it. You remount slowly, joints protesting, and urge Quiet Moon forward, only a little farther until the next relay. The trail bends sharply to the left, skimming a hillside where tall grass grows in tufts, and the earth smells damp and mineral-rich. The first light of false dawn begins to touch the sky, just a blush of pale lavender behind the trees. And then, lanterns again. The next station is perched on a narrow ledge of land overlooking terraced tea fields. It's small, no more than 3 rooms, and a stable, but it's home, for the next 15 minutes at least. You dismount, hand off Quiet Moon, and are met by a clerk with ink on his nose and a yawn still stretching his jaw. He checks your pouch, nods, and offers a sweet rice cake. You eat it with one hand while stretching with the other. It tastes like honey and sesame, and you consider asking for the recipe, but don't. You won't remember it anyway. Last leg, the clerk says, motioning to the next horse. Already waiting, already saddled. Should be smooth. You nod. You'll believe it when your knees do. The final stretch before sunrise is always the most surreal. Your senses blur. Fatigue, habit, and just enough adrenaline mingle until you're half dream, half rider, a kind of ghost with saddle sores. Your new horse is a lithe black mare named Moth Smoke, which feels poetic if slightly ominous. She tosses her head as you approach, nostrils flaring like she's sniffing out your intentions. You nod. Let's try not to disappoint each other. You mount carefully, not because of fatigues, though yes, but because Moth Smoke seems like the sort to take offense if your boot scuffs her the wrong way. The clerk hands over 2 small scrolls, neither sealed with wax. Both are wrapped in yellow silk, tagged for a T-tax inventory and a weather report. Critical to someone, certainly. You tuck them securely into your pouch, and just like that, you're off again. The trail now cuts along a mist-shrouded ridge, lined with narrow terraces. The terraced tea fields below stretch in layered green waves, invisible in the dark, but known to your memory. You've passed this way before, long ago, when it was early spring and the first harvest shimmered with dew. Now, in the pre-dawn hush, the fields are silent, save for the soft creak of bamboo water clocks far off in the villages. As Moth Smoke picks up speed, her hooves barely whispering against the earth, you feel the familiar pang of anticipation. One last station, one more handoff, one more quiet ritual in a 1,000-year chain. You're part of something larger, something as bureaucratic as it is beautiful, and occasionally ridiculous. You recall the time a fellow courier dropped an entire pouch of scrolls into a duck pond while reaching for a dumpling. He dried them in the sun and retied them in what he called artisan scroll knots. The official who received them was less appreciative. Your colleague now delivers messages strictly between melon markets. You round a bend, and the trail narrows to barely a horse's width. On one side, a steep slope of ferns and twisted roots. On the other, a drop into darkness and unseen streams. You lean forward, shifting your weight subtly, and Moth Smoke responds with sure-footed grace. You trust her instinctively, like you'd trust a well-worn pair of boots or a friend who always lies the same way. Halfway through the pass, you spot something hanging from a tree branch, an old talisman made of folded paper and red thread fluttering in the faint wind. Travelers leave them for protection, or perhaps to appease the road spirits. This one bears a single character, an peace. You murmur the word aloud. It tastes soft in your mouth. The trail widens again, and a chorus of frogs announces the return of lower ground. You descend into a hollow where the air is warmer, thick with the scent of loam and blooming jasmine. There's a thin ribbon of water here, a stream so clear it reflects the stars like a mirror cracked only by ripples. Moth Smoke pauses to drink, and you take the opportunity to rinse your face with icy water. It stings, waking you up just enough to remember your own name. The next few li are smoother. The road has been recently repaired. Smooth stone, fitted with careful seams. thanks to a local governor who, rumor has it, only funds public works if he can personally inspect the finish with silk slippers. The landscape changes subtly. Forests give way to bamboo groves, then to farmland marked by stacked stone walls and sleepy oxen dozing in pens. You pass a shrine carved into a rock face, this one guarded by 2 stone rabbits rather than lions. You've always liked this one. The rabbits seem less judgmental. Dawn breaks gently over the eastern hills. The sky is lavender at first, then streaked with gold. Birds begin to stir, and you feel the shift not just in light, but in air. Cool night sighing into warm morning. You crest a hill, and there it is, the last relay station. Larger than the rest. Its tiled roof catches the first sunlight, glowing as if dusted with fire. A pair of tall flags flutter above its gate, each bearing the courier emblem. A phoenix with a scroll clutched in its claws. You ride up the final path, heart steady, legs sore, mouth dry. A boy no older than 10 rushes to take Moth Smoke's reins. "You're early," he says in disbelief. Barely. You hand over the scrolls and slide off the saddle, your knees audibly voicing their opinion about all this. A clerk meets you at the threshold, brush already poised to sign your manifest. He flips through the scrolls, eyes skimming the silk tags, then nods. "All accounted for," he says. "You made good time. You'll be noted." You raise an eyebrow. "In the records or the gossip?" He grins. "Both." Inside, a table has been set. Tea, dumplings, and a bowl of congee with preserved plum. It's a courier's breakfast. Bland, sustaining, strangely perfect. You eat slowly, savoring the stillness. A cat dozes on a windowsill. Pigeons coo on the roof. The world is turning again, and you're still upright, just barely. You lean back, finish your tea, and rest your head against the wall. You've done it. One stretch of the Empire's endless arteries kept open a little longer, thanks to your effort, your saddle, your sore back, and a few quietly heroic horses. Outside, the sun continues its climb, and somewhere, far away, a scribe begins reading a scroll that only reached them because you didn't fall into a ravine. You don't linger long. The congee settles warm in your belly, and you can feel sleep tapping at the corners of your vision, but the station master gives you that look, equal parts sympathy and schedule. Couriers rest in fragments, not whole nights. There are still logs to sign, records to seal, horses to inventory. So you rise, groaning quietly as you stretch, and move toward the bench where the manifest book lies open. It's large, lacquered in red and gold flecks, with each courier's name entered in precise brushstrokes. The ink smells faintly of pine soot. You flip to the current day and scribble your signature. Next to it, the station master writes the time, well before sunrise, thank you very much, and stamps it with the relay seal. It's an oddly satisfying moment, like putting a final punctuation mark on a long sentence written in mud, sweat, and saddle grease. You wash your hands with tepid water poured from a bamboo pipe, then glance over to the stable yard. Your last horse, Moth Smoke, is already being led away, her tail flicking lazily, as if she's retired from this whole affair and is ready to write poetry. You almost envy her, but there's still more work to be done. The next part of the system isn't yours to ride, but you're part of it nonetheless. See, after the scrolls are delivered to the main relay, there's a second process, record copying. The Tang postal service relied not only on fast legs and strong hooves, but also on a labyrinthine system of document duplication. Each important message had to be copied at least once, sometimes thrice, depending on its route, destination, and importance. The idea was simple. If one scroll was lost, another would survive. You watch as a young clerk, barely out of training, judging by the way he holds the brush like it might explode, prepares to transcribe the tea inventory scroll. He squints, tongue sticking out slightly, and begins to copy each character, line by patient line. You step closer, out of curiosity and habit. The process is hypnotic. The ink is rich and dark, made from finely ground soot, mixed with water and a dash of oil for smoothness. The brush moves in gentle arcs, shaping the characters with the kind of reverence you usually reserve for warming your fingers over a brazier. You marvel for a moment at the chain of hands that a single scroll passes through: messenger, transcriber, sealmaster, archivist, scribe, and finally, the distant official who requested it in the first place. And to think, some of them only glance at the contents before filing it away. You shake your head. It's like delivering a song only to have it hummed once and forgotten. Still, the beauty of the system lies in its stubborn continuity. Whether the scroll is read or ignored, the act of carrying it remains unchanged. It's the journey that gives it meaning. The clerk finishes the copy and places a weighted rod across the top to prevent curling. He glances up and smiles awkwardly. "My third one this week," he says. "No ink splashes this time." You offer a low nod. That's practically a promotion. He laughs nervously, then sneezes into his sleeve. You step back. Ink and colds do not mix. You wander outside again, drawn by the changing light. The sun now rises in earnest, spilling gold across the valley below. Rice paddies shimmer like mirrors, and the mist lifts in slow, swirling ribbons. In the distance, the temple bells toll softly, calling monks to breakfast or prayers or possibly both. The world feels wide and crisp and alive. You lean on the low wall at the edge of the station's courtyard. Down below, the next courier is already mounting up. A young woman with a fresh uniform, her badge still shiny, her eyes wide. You remember that look? It's a mix of determination and quiet panic, like someone who's just been handed an imperial decree and a compass with no directions. You raise a hand in silent greeting. She sees you, nods, then rides off at a brisk trot, scroll pouch bouncing against her hip. And just like that, the message lives on, traveling farther than you ever will. Back inside, the station master begins to sort through the remaining deliveries. You overhear part of a conversation, something about delays near the eastern routes, a washed-out bridge, and an entire bag of grain statistics that had to be rewritten from memory by an unfortunate bureaucrat with a penchant for exaggeration. One of the other clerks chuckles. He said the region had 9,000 ducks. Last year it was 800. Maybe the ducks got promoted, someone quips. You smile despite yourself. Courier humor, strange, dry, and weirdly obsessed with livestock. The station master approaches with a smaller pouch in hand. Not for delivery, this one's yours. Inside is a folded sheet of orders, 2 paper coins for your pay, and a round fruit bun wrapped in lotus leaf. A reward. You take the pouch and tuck it away and thank him with a bow. You'll rest now? He asks. You consider that. A proper sleep, a hot bath, maybe even a conversation with someone who doesn't measure time in lie and lantern marks. It sounds indulgent, but deserved. Briefly, you say, before the next road, because there's always a next road, always another scroll waiting to ride. The station master nods, as if he expected this. He turns back to his records, and you begin the slow walk toward the sleeping quarters, a small side chamber with thick mats, a single candle, and a curtain that barely pretends to keep the light out. You slip inside, lay down your pouch, and ease yourself onto the mat. Your boots thud softly as you remove them, and the simple act of lying back feels like being poured into warm stone. The world narrows. The scrolls are gone. The horses are sleeping. The roads have stopped moving just for a while. You exhale, not in triumph, not even in relief, but in rhythm, because this is how it works. This is what it means to be part of something ancient, ridiculous, and strangely beautiful. The journey continues. Even in rest, you sleep like a stone in a river, still on the outside, but worn smooth by the current of dreams rushing over you. When you finally stir, it's to the soft thump of a nearby shutter being closed, and the scent of fried scallions wafting in from the station kitchen. Your eyes flutter open just enough to see the faint outline of a straw hat hanging from a peg. For a moment, you have no idea where you are. Not uncommon. Life on the road blurs location like watercolor in rain. But then your back reminds you. Ah, right. Relay Station 24. Terraced tea fields. Moth smoke with the attitude of an empress. You stretch slowly, like unfurling a scroll that's been left rolled too tightly. Each vertebra pops in sympathy. A quick splash of cold water from the wash basin clears the fog from your face, and by the time you've belted your robe and laced your boots, you're halfway back to courier mode. Down in the yard, the clerks are bustling. Scrolls are being sorted, horses fed and brushed, and a few new arrivals blink sleepily into the daylight, like moles poked from the earth too early. One courier has a fish wrapped in paper under his arm. You decide not to ask. You collect your next set of orders from the station master. No immediate run, thankfully. Just a quiet return journey. No rush. Which in courier terms means you'll still be galloping by noon. You saddle your assigned mount, a shaggy cinnamon-colored gelding named Spare Button, and swing up with less grace than you'd like, but more than you expected. Your legs argue, but you're learning to ignore them. The road this time leads west, back along a parallel path to the one you came in on. This one's more traveled, used by local officials, grain merchants, and the occasional wandering scholar who insists on asking you if you've read their poems. You always say yes. You never have. Spare Button is a solid, unhurried companion. He walks like he's never once been late to anything and doesn't plan to start now. You let him set the pace. After all, it's not about speed today. It's about presence. Watching the road breathe, letting the world unfold one rice paddy, one tea leaf, one crooked milestone at a time. You pass a wayside pavilion mid-morning. It's a square wooden structure with curved eaves and faded murals of plum blossoms and court ladies dancing. Inside, a traveling puppet troupe is performing for a small audience, mostly children and a few grandmothers pretending not to laugh. The lead puppet, a wide-eyed rooster in a scholar's robe, declares something about the ethics of borrowing ginger. You pause just long enough to hear the punchline. It's not theft if it's spicy. You ride on, smiling. Further down, you encounter a flock of goats being shepherded, badly, by two teenage boys more interested in arguing than herding. The goats season the moment, scatter like rice thrown at a wedding. One bounds right in front of Spare Button, who does not flinch. You murmur, "He's seen worse," and keep going. The boys wave sheepishly. You nod back. Just past midday, you break for water at a small roadside shrine. It's one of those travel blessings carved into stone, short and practical. Clear path, steady legs, good weather. You pour a ladle over your hands, then offer a few drops to Spare Button, who sniffs and decides against it. Fine. More for you. You eat a dried plum and a handful of sticky rice wrapped in lotus leaf. Simple food, honest. The kind that sticks with you, both in your gut and in your teeth. The sun climbs, but merciful clouds offer shade. You pass two villages nestled in the folds of green hills, smoke drifting from their chimneys like lazy brushstrokes. People wave as you pass, out of habit or recognition, or simply because, in many towns, the sight of a courier meant good news, even if they never read the scrolls themselves. Historians still debate the psychological role of messengers in Tang society, whether they were feared, revered, or merely pitied. Some argue couriers were symbols of imperial reach. Others say they were just glorified errand runners. Personally, you've always felt like a bit of both. Dignified donkey with paperwork. Mid-afternoon brings a stretch of road lined with flowering apricot trees. The petals fall like confetti in slow motion, blanketing the ground in pale pink. You ride through it like you're part of a wedding procession, except no one's getting married, and the bride is probably a provincial census report. Still, it feels beautiful. You spot a weathered marker by the road, an old milestone shaped like a tortoise. They used to say if you rubbed its head, your message would arrive faster. So of course, someone's rubbed it down to a smooth lump over the centuries. You reach down, give it a friendly pat anyway, and whisper, "No rush this time." Not far beyond, you meet another courier traveling in the opposite direction. He's on a wiry white pony and wears a hat woven from reeds. You exchange nods, then he leans in as you pass and mutters, "Try not to nap near the goose farm." Then he's gone. You file that under probably good advice. Evening begins to descend gently. The road widens and rolls past a shallow lake where fishermen cast nets from bamboo rafts. The water glows with reflected sky, and the scent of mud and lilies drifts across the path. A kingfisher darts out, then vanishes like punctuation. You slow your pace, letting Spare Button choose his rhythm. There's no urgency now, just the gentle pull of routine, the long exhale of a day well spent. As you reach the outskirts of the next station, your legs stiffen, your spine creaks, and your eyes feel like they've been open since the Han Dynasty. You dismount, pat Spare Button's thick neck, and whisper, "You're a better horse than I deserved." He swishes his tail and pretends not to care. Inside, The clerk offers you warm barley tea and a place to sit. You take both without speaking. There's a scroll on the table nearby, open to a weather forecast written 3 days ago. You read it anyway. Outside, the sun sinks behind the hills. Inside, the station walls glow with soft lamplight. You're still on the road, still in motion, but for tonight the pace slows, and in that slowness, something resembling peace. The barley tea is just lukewarm enough to be comforting without requiring effort. You sip slowly, each swallow unwinding a knot somewhere between your shoulder blades. The room is quiet, save for the low crackle of a brazier and the soft shuffle of papers being sorted nearby. The station clerk, an older man with eyebrows like thatched roofs, glances up and nods toward a stack of scrolls. "If you're curious," he says, "we just got the annual list of banned flute songs." You blink. "Flute songs?" He nods, dead serious. "Apparently one caused a stampede last year." You lean back, letting that image dance through your head. A traveling musician, an ill-advised solo, and a herd of startled oxen deciding to collectively ruin someone's week. The clerk shrugs. Officials hate what they can't hum along to. You stifle a laugh, finish your tea, and stretch again. The travel hasn't quite left your bones yet, but you're settling. The station smells faintly of cedar oil and old ink, a scent you've come to associate with pause, if not full rest. You walk out into the courtyard as twilight deepens, bathing the tiled roofs and worn flagstones in indigo. Lanterns are being lit one by one, their glow wobbling slightly in the breeze. You help tie one onto the gatepost, just for something to do with your hands. It's an old ritual. Light a lantern, guide the next rider home. Your assigned quarters for the evening are simple, thin cotton bedding laid across a raised platform with a faded screen showing a tiger chasing butterflies. You stare at it for a minute, unsure whether it's supposed to be metaphorical or just weird. You unpack your pouch, though there's nothing inside but your personal kit. A flintstone, 2 spare scroll ties, a half-used vial of clove oil for muscle aches, and a folded slip of paper with a poem on it. Not yours. You found it wedged in the beams of a station weeks ago. The handwriting was too good to leave behind. It reads, "Carry wind, carry flame, carry names they'll never know. You are the road's breath." You still don't know who wrote it. Probably someone like you, someone who stared too long at milestones and named their bruises after towns. Outside, crickets begin their night concert, joined by the occasional bark from a dog down the road. You lie down, arms behind your head, and stare at the rafters. This is the strange in-between of the courier's life. Not quite on duty, not quite off. You're a passenger of the schedule, even when you're still. After some time, the door creaks open. A young apprentice, barely old enough to grow a decent mustache, peeks in and gestures awkwardly. "We've got a new one, transfer rider, just arrived from the river route." You sigh and swing your legs over the mat. Sleep will have to wait. You follow the boy back through the station to the main hall. The new rider is hunched over a bowl of millet soup, cheeks flushed from wind and exertion. Her boots are still wet, and her pouch drips onto the floor with every movement. You recognize the river courier uniform, a lighter sash, waterproof scroll casing, and a faint smell of fish. "Leaky barge," she says, noticing your glance. "Always is," you reply, and she snorts. She hands over a message wrapped in oiled silk. You receive it with both hands, out of habit and respect. The tag is marked with an urgent courier glyph, one that means it needs to be forwarded inland, fast. You don't say anything, just nod to the clerk. He's already moving to reschedule another rider, but you interrupt. "I'll take it." The river courier raises an eyebrow. "Didn't you just come in?" You shrug. "I've napped harder than that." Truthfully, you feel like a tapestry that's been folded one too many times, but this is the way. Sometimes the road picks you, even when you thought you'd stepped off it for the night. The clerk sighs, updates the logbook, and hands you a sealed meal packet. Dried fish, pickled radish, and a single tea egg. You pocket it with resignation. 15 minutes later, you're saddled again. This time, your mount is a short, round gelding named Embers. He looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, but accepts your presence with a groan and a determined snort. You nudge him onto the dark road, now lit by scattered lanterns and the cold gleam of starlight. The next leg is shorter, but less friendly. Uneven paths, hills riddled with mole tunnels, and forests known for tricky winds that make tree limbs groan like voices. But you've ridden worse. At least it's not the goose farm. Embers ambles forward with a pace that screams, maximum effort, minimal enthusiasm. You sympathize. The sky above is a vast canvas of ink and silver. Constellations you only half remember from temple lessons shimmer into view. The courier's star, Zuxing, is just rising over the hills. They say if it twinkles, it means clear roads. It does. You nod up at it like an old friend. You pass a crumbling wall covered in moss, just before the old bell shrine. Supposedly, if you ring the bell and whisper a name, your message will reach its destination faster. The bell is cracked now, silenced by time, but you whisper a name anyway. Not a person's, just the name of the road. The forest hushes around you, and you ride on, feeling the scroll shift gently in your pouch. You don't know what it contains. You rarely do. That's not your part. Your part is the space between, the hooves, the sweat, the silence. You press forward, deeper into the dark, because someone, somewhere, is waiting to read what only you could deliver. The path before you tightens into a ribbon of packed soil and weather-worn stones, framed on both sides by ancient pine. The trees lean just enough to suggest they've been listening for centuries. Their branches creak softly above you, as if whispering about all the riders who passed beneath them and dared to dream they were alone. Embers, true to his name, plods forward with the weary resignation of a hearth fire that's just trying to last until morning. You don't rush him. The scroll in your pouch isn't marked for delivery by moonrise, just soon. And in the Tang postal system, soon could mean anything from hours to days, depending on the mood of your horse and the quality of last week's dumplings. You shift in the saddle, feeling the dull throb in your thighs return like an old acquaintance. Every courier eventually develops a relationship with pain. Nothing too dramatic, more like a stubborn roommate who always leaves the laundry half done. The road dips suddenly. You follow it down into a hollow where mist gathers in little puddles across the stones. Crickets and chirp louder here, echoing off the hills, while something unseen splashes gently in a stream just out of view. You pass a stone bridge with carved railings shaped like dragons and turtles. One dragon's snout is missing. You always imagine a particularly enthusiastic goat took offense one autumn. There's an incense stick still smoldering at the base of the bridge. A traveler must have left it as a prayer or possibly an apology. You inhale the faint traces of sandalwood and ash. Your stomach grumbles quietly. You remember the tea egg tucked into your pouch. You unwrap it with one hand, balancing as Embers continues his stubborn march. The egg is slightly overcooked and has a hairline crack, but the flavor is earthy, familiar, and soothing. You eat it slowly, letting the yolk coat your tongue like some long-lost flavor of childhood. Up ahead, lights flicker. Not a full station, just a rest hut. These dotted the postal roads, every few lie, offering tired riders a place to check their horses' hooves, adjust their belts, and question their life choices. This one is well kept. A bench, a trough, and a shrine box built into the wall. You dismount and let Embers drink while you stretch. The stars above feel closer here, as if the sky had dipped slightly to take a better look at your progress. You tilt your head and exhale, watching the mist curl around your boots like lazy cats. You drop a copper into the shrine box. No specific wish, just gratitude for the silence. Back in the saddle, you wind further west. The road rises again into low hills dusted with wild grasses and a few lone peach trees. One has already bloomed early, its blossoms ghost pale in the moonlight, petals drifting like forgotten letters. Historians still debate whether the Tang relay system's efficiency was due more to infrastructure or to the human will of the couriers themselves. Some say it was the carefully measured distance between stations, the uniform road markers, the government inspections. Others argue that it worked because couriers refused to let it fail, dragging half-lame horses through monsoons, memorizing village names by taste, not map. The truth, like most things, is somewhere in between. You ride on, passing a farm with rows of tall, swaying sorghum. A dog barks once, then thinks better of it. A lamp glows in one window. You wonder if it's for reading or waiting. Either way, it's none of your business. Your business is to carry what others write and leave stories for them to finish. The moon climbs higher, round and bright as a silver coin. You feel its pull on your tired eyes, but blink it away. One more hill, one more bend. As you near the next rise, a figure steps into the road, lantern raised, posture neutral. You pull Embers to a halt, hand drifting near your pouch, but not quite touching it. It's late for company. Courier? The figure asks. You nod. Yes. They lower the lantern slightly, revealing a uniform, not courier, but road warden. A thin red sash crosses their chest, and a seal hangs from their belt. Any other riders behind you? They ask, voice soft but clear. Not for another few hours. I left the station just before sundown. The warden nods, stepping aside. There's a fallen tree past the bend. We've marked it, but stay to the left. Safer footing. Thanks, you say, nudging Embers forward. Anyone hurt? Just a cart horse. Bit of a tumble, but it'll limp. The cart's less lucky. You offer a quick nod of sympathy and ride on. Sure enough, a few minutes later, you see the red marker, 2 strips of cloth tied to a stake and fluttering in the wind. The tree lies like a sleeping dragon across the path, bark split from age, moss glowing faintly in the moonlight. You veer left as instructed, guiding embers over a small rise and back onto the road. He manages it without complaint, possibly too tired to resist. Past the obstruction, the road widens again and smooths. The moonlight now floods everything. It doesn't feel like night anymore, but a silvery alternate day, quieter, softer, and less urgent. You can see the next station now, still half a li ahead. Its lanterns form a dotted line down the hill, like breadcrumbs for the weary. A dog barks once, then another answers. Human silhouettes shift behind rice paper screens. The station bell rings once, a low, flat note that sounds like a sigh. You ride toward it slowly, letting Embers take his time. The message in your pouch hasn't changed, but you have. Just a little. A layer more dust, a breath more ache, a thread deeper into the strange fabric of the road. When you arrive, no one rushes to greet you, just the steady rhythm of duty. A clerk waiting with a scroll manifest, a pot of tea warming over a brazier, and a wooden bench that looks like it's seen 100 stories and forgotten none. You dismount, hand off the scroll, and nod once. It's in your hands now. The clerk returns your nod. It'll go where it needs to, and with that, you sit down on the bench, sip the tea, and feel your heart settle back into its own rhythm. One more stretch behind you. One more night survived. You sit on the wooden bench for a while longer than usual. The tea, now lukewarm, rests in your hands like a small, obedient animal. You don't drink it right away. You just hold it. Warmth seeps into your palms and nudges your pulse down to something close to normal. Across the station courtyard, a clerk is trying to get a stubborn lantern to stay lit. He mutters to himself, waves the flame like a priest performing a reluctant exorcism, and finally coaxes it to flicker to life. You offer him a small theatrical round of applause. He bows deeply in return, still holding the lighting stick like it's a fencing sword. Sometimes it's the little moments that stitch a courier's mind back together. The night has thinned into early dawn, the not quite morning air laced with a pale mist that clings to your sleeves and hair. Insects chirp less urgently now, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster coughs into existence. You shift your feet, stiff from riding, and glance toward the stable. Embers is already dozing, his head sagging over the stall door like an old scholar who just realized the poem he was writing is actually a tax report. You smile, then wince slightly as your knees protest. That last hill really did its damage. The clerk returns, bearing your next orders. He doesn't say much, just hands you a slim scroll with your route assignment and a small square of hardened rice cake. Short leg this time, he says. Up to you, Ridge, then break. They've got bean cakes there, or at least rumors of them. You nod and pocket the scroll. Bean cakes or not, you'll take it. At this point, you'd ride across the entire empire for a breakfast that isn't wrapped in yesterday's tea leaf. The sun begins to edge over the hills as you saddle up again. The sky turns from ash to gold, the kind of slow sunrise that makes you believe in poems. You give Embers a grateful pat. He's staying behind now, and greet your new mount, a mare with salt and pepper fur, and a name that someone's painted onto her tack, Button's cousin, of course. You murmur greetings, and swing into the saddle once again. Your thighs whisper a string of quiet curses. You ignore them. The road to U Ridge starts uphill, but not sharply, just enough to remind you of your own weight. You pass terraced fields where farmers have already begun to stir. A woman in a straw hat lifts her hand in greeting. You nod back. The smell of wet soil and cut greens fills the morning air, laced with the distant tang of river breeze. About half a lie in, you pass a small side path, a shortcut used by smugglers and squirrel chasers alike. You're not meant to know it exists, but every courier finds it eventually. You consider it, then stick to the main road. The scroll in your pouch may not be urgent, but shortcuts are like gossip, tempting, unreliable, and rarely worth the detour. The path begins to rise more steeply now, snaking around boulders and over narrow crests. You lean forward slightly in the saddle to help Button's cousin keep her pace. She grunts in acknowledgement, but doesn't complain. A good sign. Halfway up the ridge, you come upon an old man resting beneath a gnarled pine. He waves as you pass, then holds up a pear the size of your fist. "Trade you for a poem," he calls out. You don't slow. "I'm fresh out." He shrugs. "Then it'll just rot." You turn back and toss him a line over your shoulder. That's what all poetry does eventually. He cackles like a child. You ride on. The final stretch to the ridge is quieter. The wind hushes, the birds fall silent, and the only sound is hoof against earth. You reach the top and pause to take it in. From this vantage point, you can see the curve of the river below, wide and gentle. Patches of cloud roll across the land like slow ships. A group of boys splash each other by the river's edge, their laughter carried up by the breeze. On the far side, a pagoda stands tilted slightly left, as if leaning in to eavesdrop on the valley. Historians still argue whether this road, this specific ridge route, was part of the original imperial relay or added later during one of the lesser documented reforms. Some say it predates the Tang entirely, perhaps carved by migrating deer and later paved by human ambition. Others believe it was designed with symbolism in mind, a road that rises, as the empire must. You don't much care. It gets you where you're going. At the ridge's peak stands a mile marker carved into granite, decorated with moss and an old ribbon someone tied around its base. You dismount, touch the stone, and close your eyes. There's something sacred in these mundane touch points, not because of religion exactly, but because of repetition. You've passed this stone before, you'll pass it again. And somehow, in doing so, you feel a little less like a passing speck of dust and more like a page in a long, patient book. You eat the rice cake from earlier, dry as a legal scroll and just as inspiring, but you chew it anyway. Halfway through, you find a sesame seed. It feels like a reward for persistence. The rest of the road is downhill, gentle, and shaded. You let Button's cousin slow to a lazy walk. You've earned it. Besides, there's a stream up ahead where couriers stop to wash their faces, refill flasks, and whisper insults at the leeches. You reach it just as a cluster of ducks waddle into view. One stares at you like it knows something. You stare back. A quiet standoff. Then it quacks once and marches off. Victory? Hard to say. You refill your flask, splash cold water on your face, and take a deep breath. The air smells like wild mint and sun-warmed stone. A few bends later, the U Ridge relay station appears. Squat, friendly, smoke curling from its chimney. A boy sees you coming and runs to open the gate. You toss him a dried plum from your pouch. He catches it like it's treasure. Inside, a clerk beckons with the kind of sleepy respect only couriers understand. Beancakes? You ask. He grins. Fresh. You dismount with exaggerated care, legs stiff as broom handles, and hand off your scroll. You're not even halfway through the day's run, but for now there's breakfast, shade, and the blessed illusion that you're stationary. And that is more than enough. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat in the corner of the U Ridge station, a warm bean cake balanced in your palm like a tiny, edible moon. The outer layer is golden and flaky, and the filling inside, soft red bean paste, just sweet enough, melts in your mouth with the kind of quiet drama that deserves a palace orchestra. For a brief, sacred moment, you forget your aching legs, the saddle sore's threatening mutiny on your backside, and the fact that your next scroll has handle with care stamped on it no fewer than 5 times. It's in these fleeting pauses where crumbs gather on your robe and the tea is just hot enough to fog your eyelids that being a courier feels less like a job and more like a monastic calling. Across the room, another rider snores gently, boots kicked off, and one arm draped over his face like a second curtain. A small lizard suns itself near the brazier. Outside, someone is trying to fix a squeaky wheel with far more confidence than skill. You polish off the cake, stretch with a groan, and rise to check on your next assignment. The clerk hands you the scroll in question, wrapped in embroidered silk and sealed with not 1, but 2 wax imprints. You raise an eyebrow. It's a marriage proposal, the clerk mutters, as if disclosing state secrets. You blink. Really? He shrugs. From a merchant in Linhai to the daughter of a wine distributor. Their parents insisted it be hand-delivered, romantic, but also extremely specific. You weigh the scroll in your hands. What if she says no? The clerk grins. Then someone gets to deliver that scroll too. You tuck the proposal into your pouch and cinch the flap shut with an extra knot. Whatever happens, the message will reach its mark. You mount up again, this time on a gray mare named Ash Dumpling, whose side eye suggests she's read the proposal and already disapproves. The road out of U Ridge curves downward through forests that hum with mid-morning insects and the occasional grunt from wild boars somewhere deep in the underbrush. The scent of pine and old rain clings to the air like a memory you didn't mean to keep. As you ride, your mind drifts. Not out of distraction, but out of practiced habit. The rhythm of the hooves, the slight sway of your body, the road unfurling like a scroll in reverse. It's all a lullaby you know by heart. You think about the kinds of messages you've carried over the years. Harvest reports, battle orders, secret complaints, grocery tallies, love letters wrapped in tea-stained silk. Once, a single sheet listing 38 varieties of radish. That scroll smelled like vinegar for a week. Historians often romanticize the Tang relay system. They speak of its order, its elegance, the clockwork efficiency of men and horses, stitching the empire together with invisible threads. What they rarely mention is the paperwork, the ink stains, the arguments over whose turn it is to muck the stalls, the beans that are never quite cooked through. And yet, here you are. Again, you pass a group of traveling monks heading the opposite direction. They walk barefoot, heads shaved, eyes lowered in quiet concentration. One carries a large pot of soup slung over his back. Another holds a wooden fish drum, though he's not beating it, just tapping the edge with his fingernail in a soft rhythm that echoes against the trees. You nod as you pass. They nod back, perfectly in sync. Monks are the only travelers who never seem surprised to see you. Later, you cross a small ravine via a rope bridge that creaks and groans with theatrical menace. You whisper a few pleasantries to the beams, offer to promise to visit your ancestors if the planks hold, and make it across in one piece. Ash Dumpling, ever the stoic, doesn't blink. The road begins to rise again, winding through tea fields arranged like lines of text on the land. Workers move through them with practiced grace, their baskets slung low, their hands quick. One woman sings a song about a rooster who gets too proud of his tail and loses it to a fox. You decide it's probably a metaphor, but you're not sure for what. You stop at a small way station, not a full courier post, but a rest hut with clean water, shade, and an old man selling boiled peanuts from a portable stove. You buy a handful and eat them slowly, watching the shadows shift across the dirt path. A girl with ink-stained fingers sits nearby, sketching birds in a notebook with remarkable skill. She glances up at you once, then back to her drawing. You watch her finish the curve of a wing, and for some reason, it feels like an entire conversation has passed without either of you saying a word. You ride on. The afternoon light softens. Shadows lengthen across the road, and the cicadas begin to warm up their evening concert. You pass another milestone carved into stone, this one shaped like a lotus bud. Someone's tied a string of shells around it, an offering maybe, or just decoration. You touch it in passing. There's something comforting in these markers, these ordinary symbols of movement. They remind you that you're part of something much larger than yourself, a sequence, a rhythm, a slow-moving river of people and purpose. You think again about the marriage proposal in your pouch, sealed in silk, heavy with hope. Someone, somewhere, has been waiting for it, practicing their response perhaps. Or maybe they're pacing back and forth, planning an escape, dreaming of a life beyond vineyards and accounting. You hope quietly that they say yes, not for romance, not even for the sender, but because a yes means your miles mattered. As dusk begins to fall, the next station comes into view. A small complex nestled beside a pond where frogs sing like drunken poets and dragonflies skim the water like tiny dancers late for rehearsal. You dismount, hand off the scroll, and ask, almost casually, how far to Linhai? The clerk checks the board. 2 more runs, if the weather holds. You nod. You've made longer treks for less. You lead Ash Dumpling to the trough and let her drink, then brush the dust from your sleeves, pick a bit of peanut skin from your teeth, and sit beneath the eaves of the station building. The pond reflects the last light of the sky. Fireflies blink in slow Morse code. You can hear someone in the kitchen washing rice, the grains falling into the pot like soft applause. You've got another leg tomorrow, but for now, just for this hour, you let yourself pause. The road is long, yes, but tonight, you've arrived. Your dreams are half memory, half imagination. Your boots sinking into soft loam, scrolls fluttering like birds, a horse whispering tax policies in perfect rhyme. You wake not from noise, but from the absence of it. Morning has a way of sneaking up on you in the countryside, slipping through the gaps in the roof tiles like a polite intruder. The station at Linhai's outskirts is already stirring. A boy runs past carrying a basket of eggs balanced on his head. A woman in a faded blue robe sweeps the steps with such intensity you'd think the dust had personally offended her. You groan and sit up. Your left arm has fallen asleep. Your right hip mutinies, and your knees sound like distant thunder as you stand. Another day, another scroll, another town. You find the clerk in the main hall already scratching notes into the logbook. He's a precise man, long fingers, thin mustache, and the general demeanor of someone who knows exactly how many beans are in a bag without counting. He gestures at a small package wrapped in yellow silk. For the magistrate's assistant, he says, it was meant to be delivered 3 days ago. Was it lost, you ask? He shakes his head. The courier took ill after a bad oyster. You wince. I'll try to do better. You add the yellow silk package to your pouch, now bulging slightly with documents of unknown emotional value. Beside it, the marriage proposal still waits, its sender likely imagining candlelit confessionals while you navigate pond-side mosquitoes and saddle friction. You saddle up your next mount, a bay mare named Oolong. She snorts softly and nudges your elbow, possibly hoping for sugar, possibly mistaking you for someone who shares. The road into Linhai is well kept, shaded by camphor trees that arch above like cathedral vaults. The breeze carries the scent of citrus and river water. You pass a woman selling fans, hand-painted with foxes and cranes. She nods toward you and says, "Hope your message isn't too heavy." You smile. It's love and bureaucracy, so, yes. You reach Linhai's outer wall by mid-morning. The guards wave you through with minimal fuss. The postal sash you wear grants you small miracles like that. The city hums with market energy, spice vendors shouting over fishmongers, children chasing each other with carved wooden swords, an elderly man reciting poetry to a cluster of pigeons who are far more polite than his usual audience. You navigate the streets slowly, letting Oolong pick her way past carts and rickshaws. The city is a different kind of terrain, less predictable, more fragrant, and full of sudden children. You reach the magistrate's residence without incident. A servant greets you, takes the yellow silk package with a bow, and slips you a hard candy for your trouble. You tuck it into your pouch next to the marriage proposal. There's a certain poetry in that. You're just about to head back toward the station when you feel it, the itch of completion. That quiet voice in your spine that says, you could stop now and no one would blame you. You ignore it, as always. Instead, you make your way through Linhai's winding lanes, toward the address marked on the love scroll. A tall house with a tiled roof and a courtyard filled with grapevines. A man leans against the gatepost, inspecting a pomegranate with the kind of intensity normally reserved for tax evasion. Wine distributor's place, you ask? He looks up. If it's about the debt, tell them we paid it. Not debt. Proposal. His expression changes, like a cloud passing over the sun. Confusion, then embarrassment, then the careful neutrality of someone who doesn't want to admit they've been waiting. He takes the scroll with reverence and a bit of dread. Will you wait for a reply? You shrug. Standard fee doesn't include heartbreak, but I'm patient. He disappears into the house. You dismount and wait in the shade of a plum tree. The blossoms have fallen and the branches hum with bees. You unwrap the hard candy and pop it in your mouth. It tastes faintly of licorice and missed opportunities. 20 minutes pass, maybe more. Eventually, the man returns. He's holding a smaller scroll, lavender silk, single seal. His face gives away nothing. She says yes, he says softly. You grin. Congratulations, or condolences, whichever fits better in a year. He laughs a bit helplessly and hands you a copper coin. Buy yourself something sweet. I just did. You ride out of Linhai as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky with hints of amber and slate. You've still got another station to reach before night, but for now you feel oddly light. The pouch is one scroll lighter. The road stretches out again, eternal and indifferent. Historians still argue about the emotional toll on couriers. Some claim it was a lonely life. Others argue that the constant movement kept despair at bay, that when your body is in motion, your mind can't gather enough dust to spiral. Maybe both are true. You find yourself humming as oolong clips along the raised road. A rice farmer waves from a flooded field, his trousers rolled to his knees, a heron perched nearby like a bored supervisor. A woman passes carrying a basket of leeks. She looks at your uniform and says, "Hope they said yes." You just smile. The next station appears just as the sun kisses the horizon. You arrive, dismount, hand off your log, and pour a ladle of cold water over your face. You feel new again, or at least newly tired. Dinner is steamed taro and boiled greens with vinegar. A clerk offers you a slice of candied ginger, and you accept like it's a reward from the emperor himself. You settle into your sleeping mat, legs aching, mind softening. Somewhere, a man is probably rereading his acceptance letter by lantern light. Somewhere, a girl is smiling into a cup of plum wine. And somewhere, on the long road between, you are exactly where you're meant to be. You wake to rain, not the loud, theatrical kind that drums the roof with a vengeance, but the gentle, curtain-like drizzle that softens edges and makes everything seem vaguely musical. It taps on the wooden beams above you, pattering in rhythms that sound like lullabies played backwards. There's a smell in the air, too. Wet earth, sandalwood ash, and something vaguely fried wafting from the kitchen. Your stomach, loyal as always, begins composing a protest letter. You sit up and stretch, spine popping like a row of firecrackers. Every inch of you feels slightly soggy, even though you're under a roof. Humidity is like bureaucracy. It seeps in whether you invite it or not. By the time you reach the kitchen, The morning fire is already stoked, and a sleepy-eyed apprentice slides a bowl of rice porridge your way. It's steaming, plain, and sprinkled with a few crispy shallots. You don't bother thanking her with words. You just inhale half of it in one breath. The clerk appears a few minutes later with your route assignment. He's chewing on a bamboo toothpick and frowns at the rain as if he personally ordered sunshine. "Short leg today," he says, "just over the hills to Pine Gate Station. They need someone to take the ceremonial scroll for the local shrine festival. Nothing urgent, but, you know." You nod. Ceremonial scrolls aren't exactly thrilling, but they're considered high honor. Which is funny, because half the time they're just poetry written by elderly monks with excellent penmanship and questionable metaphors. You saddle up your next ride, a shaggy black gelding named Inkblot. His mane looks like someone started trimming it, got distracted by a butterfly, and never came back. He eyes you warily, but allows the bit and reins without too much drama. It's going to be a good day, or at least, not a catastrophic one. The path to Pine Gate begins through low, muddy fields and gently rolls upward into misty forest. The rain filters down through the canopy, collecting on your shoulders, your knees, your everything. Still, it's oddly calming. The world is muffled, wrapped in the soft hush of falling water. You pass a man hauling a wheelbarrow full of turnips, his face wrapped in a scarf, his hat sagging under droplets. He gives you a nod. You nod back. In that single gesture, entire paragraphs of complaint are exchanged silently. Further along, you spot a shrine tucked beneath a grove of cypress trees. It's tiny, just a stone box with a red ribbon and a pile of offerings, boiled eggs, a pair of sandals, and what appears to be a comic poem about turnip theft. You drop a dried plum onto the pile and whisper, "For speed and dry socks." Inkblot snorts like he's unimpressed. You climb steadily, the road narrowing into a ridge trail. On clear days, the view from up here would stretch for Lye, fields, towns, even the white-sailed curve of the coast. But today it's clouds and trees and clouds, all blurring at the edges like someone smudged the whole province with their thumb. Historians still debate whether the Tang Empire's reliance on these ridge routes was more about defense or aesthetics. Some claim the views kept couriers inspired. Others argue it was a way to avoid toll-collecting warlords in the valleys. Whatever the reason, it's a beautiful path, even soaked. You find yourself daydreaming again, not about love or war, but about dry blankets and the perfect cup of ginger tea, maybe a baked yam, maybe two. This is what years on the road have done to you. Romantic fantasies now involve soup temperature and the structural integrity of slippers. As you descend toward Pine Gate, the rain begins to ease. The sky doesn't clear so much as lift its veil, allowing a washed-out sun to peek through for a moment, like a shy guest arriving late to a banquet. You arrive at the station just after midday. It's a modest place. Low walls, a single stable, a watch bell that's seen better centuries. But it's warm, and the station master greets you with a fried rice cake in one hand and a smile in the other. "You've brought the poem?" he asks. You nod and hand over the scroll, which is quickly taken inside to be placed on a ceremonial altar. Tonight is their annual lantern lighting, a local tradition involving prayers, singing, and, if rumors are true, an ill-advised amount of sweet wine. "You'll stay?" the station master asks, hopeful. You hesitate. Your route could technically allow it. The rain has slowed. Your pouch is empty. And frankly, the idea of standing near a bonfire and singing slightly off-key with strangers sounds like the best idea you've had all week. You stable Inkblot, who promptly rolls in hay like he's on vacation, and settle into the station's main hall, where someone is already preparing rice balls and pickled greens. You sit near the fire, toes thawing, shoulders finally relaxing. Evening arrives wrapped in red paper and lantern light. The courtyard glows with flickering color. Locals arrive bearing gifts: candied lotus root, sesame dumplings, a basket of garlic tied with string for luck or vampires. No one seems sure which. You join the crowd as the shrine keeper reads the ceremonial scroll aloud. It's long, florid, and contains at least 3 metaphors involving clouds, goats, and longing. You understand maybe half of it. The rest washes over you like incense smoke, pleasant, vague, and entirely appropriate. Afterward, the lanterns are lit and floated down the nearby stream. Each one carries a name or wish written in delicate calligraphy. You light one for your own purposes, and after a moment's hesitation, write, "May the road carry all feet gently." You watch it drift away, bobbing softly in the current, until it's just one speck of light among many. Someone hands you a cup of sweet wine. Another begins to play a reed flute. The fire crackles. The stars emerge slowly, as if auditioning for the night. And you think, just for a breath, that this moment of warmth and shared song and distant floating wishes is why you carry scrolls across mountains and storms and bee-ridden courtyards. Not for pay, not even for duty, but for arrival. Morning returns with birdsong and the gentle clinking of empty wine cups being gathered into baskets. The smell of smoke still lingers on your cloak, and someone, likely you, dropped a bit of candied lotus root into your left boot overnight. You fish it out, mildly annoyed, but also a little impressed by your own ability to celebrate in moderation and still make questionable snack choices. The Pine Gate station is already bustling. A clerk yawns into a ledger, an apprentice sneezes repeatedly near the fire, and your friend Inkblot is outside pretending he hasn't been rolling in muddy straw all night. You tighten your belt and scan the day's assignment board. There's your name, or at least your courier sign, beside a short note and a tiny painted plum blossom. "Special dispatch," the clerk explains as you raise an eyebrow. "A coded report to the regional inspector at Danyang. Courier seal required. Travel with care, but no need to sprint." You nod. Coded messages were part of the job, though usually they involved trade matters or court updates delivered in carefully cloaked prose. Once, a courier was arrested for delivering a love letter disguised as military intelligence. That particular message had the unforgettable line, "Your eyes are like border fires, burning into my tax estimates." Still, no one wants to be the courier who spills a secret because they left the pouch open while buying dumplings. You give Inkblot a good brushing, more for your benefit than his, then mount up and set out. The road to Danyang begins through bamboo groves, the stalks tall and whispery, the light filtered in gentle green patterns across the path. It's the sort of ride that encourages humming. You try out a few melodies you've picked up from stations along the coast. Rice cellar chants, harvest songs, a strange lullaby about an emperor who couldn't fall asleep until his servants sang in reverse. The scroll in your pouch shifts slightly as you ride. Its seal presses against your back like a reminder. This one is different, not heavier in weight, but in meaning. You don't know what's inside. It's not your place to ask, but the clerks handled it with the kind of reverence usually reserved for ancestral portraits and expensive vinegar. As the road begins to slope downward, the air grows warmer, and the scent of early summer becomes more insistent. Jasmine vines curl around gateposts. Somewhere nearby, a water buffalo grunts like it's just been given bad news. You pass a woman balancing 2 baskets filled with pickled radish jars. She offers you one for free, because couriers never stop, and neither do bowels. You accept it politely, unsure how to respond, and tuck it into your pouch beside the scroll with as much dignity as you can manage. Midway to Danyang, the road crosses a low stone bridge covered in moss. The stones are uneven, and Inkblot hesitates. You dismount and walk him across, patting his neck with quiet reassurance. "It's not the worst bridge we've crossed," you mutter. "Remember the one that smelled like duck fat and betrayal?" He snorts, possibly in agreement. You pass a shrine to the god of safe travels, with a stone fox curled at its base. You leave a copper and a dried plum. You're not superstitious exactly, but the scroll in your pouch pulses with unspoken expectation, just enough to make you cautious. Historians still debate whether these regional dispatches were primarily administrative or quietly political. Some scholars argue they kept the empire running, flowing with knowledge and updates. Others insist they were instruments of soft control, reminding every corner of the Tang realm who held the ink brush. All you know is that they're never sent lightly, and always received with ceremony. By late morning, Danyang's walls come into view, broad, sun-warmed and lined with pale blue banners that flutter like lazy birds. You approach the southern gate and show your courier token. The guards nod and wave you through. One of them offers you a cold pickled plum from a pouch at his side. "For the heat," he says. You suck on it as you enter the city proper, the tartness waking up parts of your mouth that had been gently snoozing since dawn. The regional inspector's office sits at the top of a narrow street, shaded by ginkgo trees that scatter gold across the stone. 2 clerks stand outside, arguing about handwriting. One nods when he sees you. "Courier," he says, "we've been expecting that scroll." You hand it over, your fingers briefly reluctant. There's something about delivering an unread message, something final about it, like closing a chapter you never got to read. The clerk breaks the seal, peers at the contents, then raises an eyebrow. "Well?" his companion asks. "It's not poetry," he mutters, and they both disappear inside. You stand in the street for a moment, suddenly very aware that your pouch is empty, your horse is bored, and your mouth still tastes faintly of radish and vinegar. A passing vendor shouts about sesame buns. Another offers bean soup with a guarantee of no side effects. You pick the vendor with the shortest line and eat standing up, watching the street flow past like a slow river of feet, carts, and conversations. A courier without a scroll is a bit like a kettle without water, still useful, just waiting for a reason to hum. You wander toward the Danyang courier post, a tidy building with ivy climbing one side and a cat sleeping on the roof tiles. Inside, a clerk waves you over. "Lucky you," she says. "Someone dropped off an outbound letter to the west. Just came in. Short leg." You nod. The scroll is unremarkable. Plain wrapping, single seal, but with the note, "Return delivery requested." Ah, that means someone's waiting for a reply, and it means you'll probably get to come back here in a day or two. Maybe try the side effect soup next time. You tuck it into your pouch, mount up again, and head west under a sky that's forgotten all about yesterday's rain. The road is warm, the wind easy, and for now the scroll doesn't whisper. It just rests, like a passenger trusting you to find the way. And you do. Always, eventually, you do. You leave Danyang with a spring in your stirrups and the faintest scent of sesame buns still clinging to your sleeves. The scroll in your pouch is light, physically at least, but you know it carries a reply that someone somewhere is pacing a courtyard for. Maybe a merchant waiting to hear if a cousin can spare rice this season. Maybe a monk responding to a poetic challenge. Maybe just a neighbor confirming that yes, the cat did eat the duck, and no, they're not apologizing. The sun is high, but filtered through layers of passing clouds. The road west hugs the edge of rice terraces, so green they almost hurt your eyes. You hum a melody, old and half-forgotten, picked up somewhere near Luoyang. It's about a goose who falls in love with his own reflection. Ends sadly, of course. Your mount today is a sturdy palomino named Sorghum. She walks like she's already late to everything, but refuses to rush. You respect that. Just ahead, a cluster of farmers repairs an irrigation channel. One of them waves as you pass, water splashing up his ankles. "Message for the clouds?" he jokes. "Only if they write back," you reply. A little further down the road, you stop at a rest hut tucked beneath a broad fig tree. There's an old man there playing a flute, carved from bamboo, the notes wandering through the air like lazy butterflies. He nods at your uniform and asks without turning his head, "Are you one of those riders who counts rivers?" You shrug, stretching your legs. "Only when I'm bored." "Then you've passed 15 today." You do a mental tally. He's wrong, but only by one. You decide not to correct him. He offers you a handful of dried persimmons from a reed pouch. Not much, but it helps the jaw stay awake. You chew one thoughtfully. It tastes like sunlight caught in a napkin. The path eventually dips into a valley, shaded by cedar and plum trees. The smell of damp bark and distant wood smoke clings to the breeze. You pass a group of school children walking home, their scrolls tucked under their arms, one of them reciting multiplication tables with theatrical solemnity. A girl at the back of the group asks, "Are you the kind of courier who reads the letters?" You shake your head. "Only the ones written on my hands." She thinks about this for a moment, then nods like you've passed a test only she knew about. The village where you're due to deliver the reply scroll is called Mulberry Ford. It's small, surrounded by orchards, and famous for producing silk thread so fine even palace seamstresses complain it's too slippery. The houses are roofed, with wide flat tiles, and most courtyards have mulberry bushes pruned into the shape of something mildly interpretive. You find the recipient easily, a middle-aged woman with ink stains on her thumbs and a hawk feather in her hair. She accepts the scroll with the kind of reverence usually reserved for marriage contracts or lottery results. She reads it once, silently, then again out loud. Her expression softens. "Good," she says simply. "He's still an idiot, but at least he remembers my birthday." She offers you a wooden pendant in thanks, shaped like a cloud, strung with a single red thread. To keep the rain away. You smile. What if I like the rain? Then you hang it upside down. You leave the village with the pendant tucked into your sash. Sorghum seems to approve. She trots more confidently now, as if one polite trinket has solved the entire concept of humidity. You're not expected at any station tonight, which means your route is open-ended. You could press forward to the next post, or you could find one of those in-between rest stops, half hut, half roomer, where the firewood is always slightly damp and the benches are always slightly warped. You choose the latter, of course. The sun begins to dip, and the air turns gold and slow. Birds call in lazy conversation. You spot a crane standing in a rice paddy, one leg lifted like it forgot what it was doing. A boy waves from a nearby field and yells, "Your horse has pretty ankles." You consider yelling back, "So do you," but think better of it. You find the rest hut just before twilight, a lean-to with a view of the valley, and a wind chime made from mismatched spoons. There's a stack of firewood, a pot of millet gruel simmering over coals, and a single sleeping mat that seems to have hosted every courier in the last decade. You unsaddle Sorghum, rub her down with a handful of dried grass, and let her drink from the nearby trough. She lowers her head with a grateful sigh and doesn't bite your sleeve once. You eat the gruel plain, but with just enough ginger to feel like someone tried. As you finish, another courier arrives from the opposite direction, his cloak soaked, his face tired. You nod. He nods back. "You got the good mat," he says. "I warmed it for you," you reply. He chuckles, lays out his gear, and pulls out a small flute. "You play?" "Only badly." "Perfect." He plays a slow tune, one of those melancholy folk songs that ends on a hopeful note. You both sit, backs against opposite beams, the fire crackling gently between you. Historians still argue whether the Tang postal system had formal resting schedules for couriers. Some say there was a carefully regimented rotation. Others believe riders made informal agreements and rarely stuck to official timetables. You figure it doesn't matter, because right now there's firelight, a dry cloak, and music that doesn't ask questions. You tilt your head back, watching moths dance in the flickering glow, and feel the tension ease from your shoulders. There's still a road to travel tomorrow, scrolls to carry, stories to pass between hands. But tonight, you rest. You rise just before dawn, while the world still whispers in its sleep. The coals from last night's fire smolder faintly, casting a soft red glow that barely reaches your boots. The other courier is still snoring, one arm draped dramatically across his face, like he's auditioning for a tragic opera. You pack your things as quietly as possible, though one of your rice crackers crumbles with an audible crunch. He flinches, but doesn't wake. Victory. Outside, the valley is a bowl of fog. You and Sorghum move through it slowly, the air cool and thick, dew soaking into the hem of your robe. The only sound is the faint clink of tack and the occasional sigh from the horse, who clearly thinks this hour is unreasonable. But there's something peaceful about riding through fog. The world narrows, yes, but so do your thoughts. One hoof after another, one breath after another. The scroll pouch is empty again, for now, but your next post is just 3 lie away, and there's always something waiting there. Sure enough, by the time the fog begins to lift, the next station appears. Low stone walls, roof tiles rimmed with moss, and a chicken asleep in the middle of the path, like it owns the empire. You dismount and lead Sorghum around the bird, because confrontation before breakfast is never wise. Inside, the clerk greets you with a nod and a bowl of pickled cabbage soup. You sip it with polite gratitude. It tastes like someone boiled a philosophy argument and forgot the salt. Assignment just came in, the clerk says, handing you a scroll wrapped in plain brown paper and tied with red string. Unusual one. You raise an eyebrow. It's a birth announcement, he says, but not just any. It's for the daughter of a famous opera singer. Apparently, she wants all the stations along the Grand Canal to know. Requests, we post copies at each stop. You stare at the scroll. So it's celebratory propaganda? Essentially, you can't help but grin. Let me guess. The baby's name is something like Heavenly Voice? The clerk flips through a side note. Close. Sound of 10,000 blossoms. You laugh, tucking the scroll into your pouch. Modest. Still, it's a cheerful errand. You mount up again and head north, where the canal winds like a ribbon through flat wetlands and low villages. The sky has fully cleared now, pale blue, with a few lingering clouds shaped like dumplings and old men's beards. The first town you reach is small but lively. You stop by the community board and post the announcement next to a notice about goat vaccinations and a hand-painted ad for plum vinegar. An old woman shuffles over, peers at the scroll, and reads it aloud with dramatic flair. Oh ho, she crows. Born during a full moon, that's lucky. Only if she doesn't try to sing with it, mutters a passing fishmonger. You ride on, amused. This leg of the route is dotted with little hamlets, each with its own posting board and preferred gossip rhythm. In one village, the posting board doubles as a noodle stall. In another, it's nailed to a tree guarded by an aggressive squirrel. You make peace offerings of peanuts and post the scroll quickly. By mid-morning, the day warms. You take off your outer robe and tie it to the saddle. Sorghum flicks her tail lazily, content with the pace. You pass a traveling musician playing a 3-stringed lute for a field of entirely indifferent cabbages. He gives you a thumbs up anyway. You stop at a rest pavilion by the canal where a group of boatmen are taking a break. They offer you tea and a seat, and soon you're swapping tales. Nothing dramatic, just everyday absurdities. One man insists he once transported a giant goose to a wedding. Another claims he delivered 4 jars of honey and came back with 3 through no fault of his own. You share the news of the opera singer's daughter, and it's received with polite nods and the comment, well, at least it's not a war scroll. You leave the pavilion with a fresh cup of tea and a half-finished riddle about foxes and umbrellas still stuck in your head. A few miles later, the road forks. One path leads to a town not marked on your current itinerary, but a courier from the opposite direction flags you down. Going to Green Willow? She asks. Not today. Pity. They're serving yam buns. Big ones. You stare at the fork a little longer than necessary, then sigh and continue on your assigned route. Duty over dessert again. The next two posting stops are uneventful. One board has been commandeered by a painter who uses it as a canvas. You carefully post the scroll between a rooster and a suspiciously muscular duck. The painter waves his brush in thanks, splattering red ink across your sleeve. You take it as a blessing. Historians still argue about how the Tang courier network balanced imperial orders with local messaging. Some suggest there was tension between state-sponsored routes and village autonomy. Others claim couriers acted as neutral threads in the weave, simply connecting without entangling. You suspect both are true. You've posted wedding notices beside crop tallies, delivered tax decrees one day, and love poems the next. The job isn't about choosing sides. It's about keeping them talking. By late afternoon, you reach the final town on today's list. The board is located just inside the town square, next to a public water spout, and under the shade of a large ginkgo tree. As you unroll the scroll, a group of children gathers. Another message? One boy asks. From the emperor? Another whispers. You shake your head. From a singer? About her baby. They blink. Does the baby sing? Asks a girl with a smudge of ink on her nose. Not yet, you say. But give her a few weeks. You post the announcement. The children stare at it like it might begin to dance. Then one shouts, "We should send something back." And before you can respond, they've run off, returning minutes later with a paper fan, a drawing of a dragon, and what appears to be a very large beetle in a box labeled gift. You accept the fan and drawing. The beetle you gently decline. As you prepare to ride out, the girl with the inky nose tugs your sleeve. Will you tell her we said hi? You pause, then nod. I will. The sun begins to sink as you ride back toward the main road. The scroll pouch is empty once more, but the paper fan flutters lightly from your saddle, and the dragon drawing is tucked inside, its crooked wings full of hope. You don't always get replies, but sometimes, even without paper, the road answers back. You ride with the low sun behind you, long shadows stretching ahead like fingers pointing the way. The road is quiet, lined with tall grasses that sway lazily in the warm breeze, whispering secrets you're too tired to decode. Sorghum plods along at a thoughtful pace, clearly savoring the end-of-day stillness. It's the hour when even the most dedicated gossip mongers begin to yawn. You could press on to the next major post, but your joints file a formal protest. Just ahead, there's a roadside inn known among couriers simply as the Noodle Stop. It's not an official postal station, no clerks, no sealed scrolls, but it does have clean mats, hot broth, and a cook who believes tofu is a philosophy rather than an ingredient. As you approach, the scent hits you first. Fermented bean paste, sesame oil, and something deep fried. You practically leap from the saddle. The inn is low and square, with lanterns that flicker orange and gold in the dimming light. A black cat lounges on the windowsill, clearly having declared herself both queen and doorman. She gives you a once-over and flicks her tail, unimpressed. Inside, the dining room is half full. Boatmen, 2 aging scholars, a couple arguing softly over dumplings. You nod to the innkeeper, who doesn't bother asking what you want. She simply gestures toward your usual table. She sets down a bowl of steaming noodle soup, heavy on the garlic chives. Beside it, pickled mustard greens, a tea egg, and a small cup of rice wine, on the house, because you look like a pigeon slept on your face. Compliments here come sideways, like rain in a strong wind. As you eat, you pull out your notebook, a battered thing filled with names, sketches, fragments of overheard songs, and at least 3 haiku about laundry. You jot down a line. She names her child after blossoms, not silence. Lucky girl indeed. You're no poet, but the soup seems to appreciate the effort. After dinner, you step outside and sit on the inn's porch. Sorghum is dozing in her tethered spot, one ear twitching occasionally in response to a night bird's cry. Fireflies blink lazily in the tall grass. A traveler joins you, a silk merchant, by the look of his robes, eyes sharp, hands soft. You ride for the post? He asks. You nod. I used to, he says, long ago, before the knees betrayed me. You smile, sympathetic. Knees are famously fickle allies. He takes a swig from a silver flask. Ever carry a scroll to the wrong person? Once, you admit. It led to an impromptu engagement and 3 goats being named after me. He laughs, coughs, then mutters, could be worse. He tells you about his current journey, some delivery of rare fabric to a wedding party 3 towns north. They say the bride insists on sea silk embroidery, the kind woven from mollusks. Took me weeks to find enough. Honestly, feels like a metaphor for the marriage. You trade more stories, including the opera baby's birth scroll, the beetle gift you tactfully refused, and your ongoing rivalry with squirrels at posting boards. He listens, nods, then says, funny thing about your work, no one remembers the writer, only the message. You nod. We're the threads, not the embroidery. But without thread, you've got a pile of colored string. You like that? You decide you'll remember it. Historians still debate how much personal interaction couriers had with the communities they served. Some records suggest they passed silently, like shadows. Others indicate they were known by name, even celebrated, especially those who stayed en route for years. Likely it varied. Some rode through history's margins like ghosts. Others made ripples, small but lasting. The merchant finishes his drink and stands. You've got to look like someone who'll be remembered. You raise an eyebrow. 'Cause I'm unusually clean? No, he chuckles. Because you're still curious. With that, he disappears into the inn, leaving you to your fireflies and thoughts. You sleep in the loft that night, wrapped in 2 thin quilts and a warm sense of contentment. Rain taps on the tiled roof around midnight, gentle as a lullaby. You dream of scrolls with blank pages that write themselves as you ride, ink blooming with every hoofbeat. At dawn, the innkeeper presses a fried dumpling into your hand before you saddle up. Eat it while it's hot, she says. Or don't. I won't chase you. You ride out under a sky washed clean, the world smelling like wet leaves and sesame. Your next post lies 12 li west, near a stone quarry that hums with chisels and gossip. They'll likely have something for you, a decree, a poem, or possibly another beetle in a box. But for now, the road stretches ahead, quiet, familiar, and full of possibility. You hum the last line of that lullaby from your dream, even though you don't remember how it started. Whatever's waiting around the next bend, you'll carry it. That's what you do. And perhaps, someday, someone will write a scroll about you. You reach the quarry town just as the stonecutters are beginning their morning shift. The rhythmic clang of iron on granite rings out in soft, staggered waves, as if the mountains themselves were sighing through chisels. A boy sits near the edge of the road, watching the workers with rapt attention and nibbling on a roasted yam. He sees your courier sash and calls out, "Delivering stones today?" You shake your head. "Only messages, lighter but harder to carry." The boy looks confused. You tip your hat anyway and continue down the winding slope toward the town center. The postal station here is carved partly into the side of a hill, with a tiled roof built out over the entry like a thoughtful eyebrow. Inside, it's cool and echoing, with shelves of scrolls, small ledgers stacked to the ceiling, and a clerk who looks like he's slept 3 hours in the last 3 days. "You're early," he says, squinting at the sunlight behind you. "Or the rest of the world is late." He smirks and hands you a dispatch wrapped in plum-colored silk. The seal bears the emblem of the Ministry of Rites, always an interesting sign. "This one's headed to a monastery near Rain Garden Pass," he says. "They've requested silence on approach." You glance at him. "Because of prayer?" "No," he replies dryly. "Because they're currently breeding silk moths, and they say noise makes them anxious." You blink. "Delicate moths, delicate monks." Fair enough. You tuck the scroll carefully into your pouch and set off again, the air beginning to warm with mid-morning sun. The route follows a shaded trail lined with red pines, and further up, fields of indigo plants waving like sleepy hands. Farmers glance up as you pass, nodding, their hands stained blue to the wrist. Halfway up the ridge, you pass a small shrine to the Wind Lord. Nothing fancy, just a carved post with a weathered hat tied to the top and some withered oranges left as offerings. You pause to leave one of your persimmons. "For quiet breezes," you whisper. The climb grows steeper and the air thinner, filled with birdsong and the rustle of lizards sunbathing in the leaves. You dismount and walk beside Sorghum, both of you puffing a little more than usual. You pass a few other travelers, traders, pilgrims, one very committed peddler, hauling a cart full of clay whistles shaped like ducks. As you near Rain Garden Pass, you hear nothing. No bells, no voices, not even the murmur of wind. The trail levels off and leads to a gate framed by flowering dogwoods. A sign hangs from a bamboo rod. "Welcome to the House of Stillness. Please speak only with your hands." You dismount, stroke Sorghum's nose to calm her, and lead her inside. The monastery courtyard is all clean stone paths, shallow pools filled with golden carp, and monks in gray robes padding silently from place to place with expressions of profound calm or faint digestive discomfort. It's always hard to tell. A young monk approaches and bows deeply. You return the bow and present the scroll. He accepts it with great care, holds it up like a sacred relic, and disappears into a side room. You stand there for a moment, unsure what to do with your hands. Another monk, older and with a beard that defies geometry, waves you to a low stone bench shaded by a wisteria vine. He hands you a cup of warm water, no tea, just water, and sits beside you in companionable silence. You sip. The water tastes like absolutely nothing, which somehow feels perfect. Eventually, the younger monk returns with a small wooden box. He offers it to you with a nod. You open it slowly. Inside is a note, inked on the thinnest rice paper, and a folded length of silver-threaded cloth. The note reads, "This is the song of the moths. Please carry it without noise." You look to the monks, puzzled. They both smile and bow. You tuck the cloth into your pouch, oddly honored, and begin the descent as quietly as you can, your footfalls measured, each hoofstep muffled in pine needles. You wonder what the Song of the Moths really is. A metaphor? A chant? A joke you weren't invited to understand? Historians still argue about the purpose of silk monasteries, like Rain Garden. Some believe they were simply centers of textile excellence. Others claim they were spiritual sanctuaries, where silence was considered essential to the refinement of both thread and thought. You suppose, as always, the truth is somewhere in between. Back on the main road, the sound of life gradually returns. Bird calls, distant drums, a dog barking at a chicken. You mount up again and ride toward your next stop, the village of Maple Hollow, known mostly for its acrobatic peach festival and a statue of a horse said to blink at midnight. You arrive around dusk. A group of children are practicing somersaults in the square. One of them asks if your horse can do backflips. You say, only in emergencies. You hand off the silver cloth to the local courier, who reads the note, eyes widening. From Rain Garden? He asks. You nod. I've heard of these, he whispers. They say if you rub it between your fingers and hum, you can hear dreams. You raise an eyebrow. And if I hum off key, you'll hear someone else's. Fascinating. That night, you sleep in a guest loft above the village dye shop. The air is thick with the scent of safflower and vinegar. You fall asleep, wondering what moth songs really sound like. If dreams can be stitched into silk. If the monks are actually just master pranksters. Whatever the truth, the scroll has been delivered. And another strange story now lingers quietly in the seams of your sash. You leave Maple Hollow under a slate-gray sky, the kind that promises rain without fully committing. Sorghum snorts as you tighten the saddle straps, flicking her tail like she knows something's coming and isn't impressed. You tuck your traveling cloak closer, still faintly scented with last night's safflower dye fumes. The local dye master had offered you a free scarf dyed with crushed orchid roots, saying it brought balance to one's liver. You accepted it cautiously and tied it to your pouch. If your liver suddenly feels more balanced, you'll let someone know. The next stretch of road meanders past terraced fields and scattered pine groves. You ride at a steady clip, enjoying the rhythmic sway of the saddle and the click of sorghum's hooves over loose stones. Somewhere up ahead, a rooster crows with the determination of a creature that hasn't realized it's already mid-morning. The route today takes you toward a station with a particular reputation, the Moss Pavilion Post. It's built halfway up a hill, surrounded by tea shrubs and legend. They say the roof leaks precisely in the shape of a tortoise. The porch hums during thunder, and at least one of the clerks is a retired actor who still speaks in tragic monologue form. The path winds upward, and halfway there you pass a monk carrying a basket full of apricots. He offers you one without speaking. You accept, biting into the soft fruit, its juice bright and a little sour. A welcome jolt of flavor in the otherwise misty, muted landscape. Moss Pavilion is smaller than you imagined, just a low wooden structure with a wide overhang and shelves stacked neatly with scrolls. The clerk on duty looks up from an abacus and nods. He does not appear to be mid-monologue. "I've got one for you," he says, reaching under the counter. "And it's peculiar." You sigh, mock suspicious. Peculiar like folded 3 times and smells like fish, or peculiar like contains coded instructions and a pressed chrysanthemum. He slides the scroll toward you. Peculiar like written by a woman who claims to be a dream interpreter and wants her findings logged with the Bureau of Cosmic Affairs. Ah, that kind of peculiar. You turn the scroll over in your hands. It's thick, wrapped in bright yellow paper and sealed with a wax stamp shaped like an eye. She insists it's urgent, the clerk says, deadpan, but also said not to rush. You nod slowly. The Bureau of Cosmic Affairs. Real or... Historians still argue about that, he replies. But yes, they existed, still do, probably, somewhere in a mountain where the clouds always smell like nutmeg. You stow the scroll in your pouch beside the orchid-dyed scarf and mount up again. The route to your next stop follows the edge of a valley known for its peculiar echoes. Every shout returns with an extra word. Last time you rode through, you said hello and heard back, hello, carrot. You test it again as you ride. Courier, you call. Courier, breakfast. The valley returns. Not bad advice, actually. You make good time, the weather holding steady with only a few desultory drizzles. The road here is hemmed in by tall grasses and low humming shrubs, known to locals as whisper bushes. Children claim they repeat your secrets if you sit beside them long enough. You sit beside one just briefly, whisper something mildly scandalous about cabbage, and move on before it can reply. The next village, Foxglove Hollow, is home to a tiny temple, 3 tea shops, and one very determined goose who patrols the North Bridge like an official tax collector. You dismount before crossing, present the goose with a ceremonial bow, and are allowed to pass with only a single honk of judgment. At the post house, you hand over the dream interpreter's scroll. The clerk there, a young woman with spectacular eyebrows, takes it carefully. She sends one every few months, she says. This is the 4th volume. Her dreams are very, well, let's just say they involve a lot of talking furniture and philosophical turtles. You're given a return letter in a green envelope, your next delivery. It's addressed to a historian at an academy near the capital. The scroll is bundled with a small tin of mint cakes and a note that reads, "In case he's still grumpy." You've heard of the historian in question, Master Wu, known for his essays on architecture, moon phases, and why umbrellas were once considered an imperial threat. Some say he once debated a parrot for 2 hours before realizing it was repeating his own arguments back at him. You ride out of Foxglove Hollow in high spirits, the road dipping into a wooded stretch where the trees lean just slightly inward, forming a natural tunnel of rustling green. You hum a marching tune from an old theater troupe, tapping the rhythm on your saddle horn. Sorghum twitches her ears, then begins to match the beat. You suspect she's always had better musical timing than you. By late afternoon, the sky shifts again, the clouds gathering with theatrical flair. Thunder murmurs in the distance, like a giant clearing its throat. You find shelter beneath a cluster of cypress trees. The rain begins, not a downpour, but a curtain of soft, silvery drops that turn the path into a shallow stream and your cloak into a reluctant sponge. You and Sorghum wait it out, sharing dried apricots and watching as the world softens. Every leaf gleams. Raindrops hang on blades of grass like beads of glass. Somewhere nearby, a frog sings a song so passionate it could be mistaken for opera. Historians still discuss how couriers adapted to the weather. Some claim they carried oiled paper canopies and waterproof sacks. Others suggest they simply became part of the rain, letting it soak through their bones until they could no longer tell where skin ended and clouds began. When the rain eases, you press on, clothes damp but spirit intact. The road dries gradually, the sky stretching open once more. You stop at a roadside shrine to the god of lost things. It's covered in tokens, hairpins, cracked cups, one rather stylish sandal. You leave a single mint cake beside a carved fox. In case you're feeling grumpy too, you murmur. By nightfall, you reach a small inn run by an ex-courier who lost his hearing but not his sense of sarcasm. He greets you with a flourish, signs, "You look like a soggy scroll," and hands you a bowl of hot taro soup. You thank him with a lopsided smile, settle near the hearth, and dry your boots while the rain begins again outside. The green envelope rests beside you, silent and dry. You'll carry it to the capital tomorrow, but tonight you listen to the rain sing its own version of the moth's song, and you sleep deeply, wrapped in dreams that don't need decoding. You rise early, the air still thick with the scent of last night's rain and simmering taro porridge. The inn's walls creak with sleepy reluctance, as if they too would rather stay in bed. You nod your thanks to the innkeeper, who hands you a piece of dried plum and a thumbs up. His smile is broad and toothy. He seems to be rooting for you, even if he's not entirely sure what day it is. Sorghum is already awake, ears flicking toward the sounds of the forest. She nudges your shoulder with her nose, perhaps checking to see if you're still you. You give her a gentle pat and offer a slice of carrot as a peace offering. The route today leads northeast, following the edge of a wide marsh and skimming past a cluster of villages known for basket weaving and excessively dramatic weather folklore. One sign at a crossroads reads, "Beware sudden fog and political debates." You nod solemnly and take the left fork. The envelope in your pouch, a reply from the dream-interpreting lady to Master Wu, sits snugly, wrapped in green silk. You resist the urge to sniff it again. The idea of delivering a dream to a historian feels mildly poetic and entirely on brand for your life these days. The path becomes busier as you near the capital. You pass a convoy of scholars debating the ethics of tofu. A woman leads a goat painted gold, possibly for a festival, or possibly just because. A child points at your uniform and yells "Letter Night," which is the highest honor you've received this week. Soon, the city walls come into view, rising behind a low ridge like a mountain forged by handwriting. Even from this distance, the gates bustle, vendors hawking steamed buns, magistrates scolding pigeons, someone trying to balance 8 scrolls and a cat at once. You flash your courier seal at the gate and ride through with only a token inspection, the guard muttering something appreciative about your scarf. You make a mental note. Orchid dye, surprisingly versatile. Inside, the streets pulse with movement. Students in matching robes hurry toward exam halls. Cooks juggle skewers over open flames, and street performers juggle fire with significantly less concern. You wind through the crowd, Sorghum keeping her composure like a true professional, occasionally leaning toward a stall as if considering an impulse purchase. Your destination is tucked behind the northern gardens, the Academy of Gentle Inquiry, where scholars live among scrolls and occasionally emerge blinking into the sunlight. You tie Sorghum outside, promising her a bean bun later, and step into the main courtyard. Master Wu is waiting. He stands near a fountain, shaped like a lion swallowing a peach, stroking his beard as though conducting a private argument with the breeze. When he sees the envelope, he lifts a single eyebrow. Is that from the dream woman? You nod and hand it over. He unties the ribbon and reads silently, lips twitching. After a moment, he says, "She's dreamed of frogs wearing crowns again." Consistent, you offer. She believes it means the price of ink will fall. You both contemplate this. He looks at you and says, "Would you like to know what I think?" You brace yourself. Always. He clears his throat. "I think the dreams are nonsense, but beautifully constructed nonsense, and that's enough." You grin. Good dreams are like good scrolls, then. They carry something. He nods, almost impressed. "Would you like a mint cake?" You raise a hand. "I came prepared." He chuckles and tucks the letter into his sleeve. "You know, I used to be a courier." You blink. "Truly?" "For 4 months," he says. "Lost a sandal, gained a wife. Never figured out if that was a fair trade." He claps you on the shoulder, murmurs something about destiny being a stubborn horse, and wanders off toward the archive building, humming what might be an opera or a lullaby. You return to Sorghum, who greets you with a snort and a look that says, "Did the old man give you snacks?" You offer her a bean bun from a nearby stall. She accepts. You're free for the rest of the day, so you wander. The capital has dozens of hidden corners, calligraphy shops with ink that smells like cinnamon, rooftop gardens where poets argue about clouds, alley cats who seem to know state secrets. You stop by a tea house shaped like a drum and sip chrysanthemum brew while a musician plays something slow and wistful on a bone flute. Historians still argue whether Tang couriers were ever truly off-duty. Some records suggest even rest days involved escorting officials, interpreting local dialects, or delivering bonus scrolls. Others hint that sometimes they just found a bench and watched birds until someone told them to move. You choose the latter option. As evening falls, you find yourself walking a quiet lane lined with lanterns. They flicker on one by one, casting a golden net of light over the street. You think of all the places you've been on this route, shrines and rest huts, rain gardens and whispering bushes. You think of the girl who gave you a beetle, the scholar who debated parrots, and the monks who whispered with moths. You return to the small stable where couriers bunk near the south gate. The air smells like hay, old ink, and horses with opinions. You lay out your bedroll, prop your satchel under your head, and watch as a beetle crawls along the beam above you. Just one, no box. The sky outside has gone indigo. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a lullaby on a stringed instrument, the notes falling like raindrops on still water. You close your eyes, and now the road has gone quiet. The scrolls are all delivered. The pouches are empty. Your horse is resting, her breathing slow and steady in the corner of the stable. The moon hangs low over the city walls, casting soft silver across the roof tiles. You hear crickets, distant bells, the occasional creak of wood shifting as the world exhales. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath slow. You've traveled across ridges and rivers, through villages filled with paper dragons and peach pies, past scholars and singers, tailors and tea makers. You've carried dreams, riddles, instructions for beetles, and news of babies with names like blossoms. You've walked through mist and sun and rain that fell sideways. You've shared soup and silence. You've told no one's secrets, only passed them gently along. Now, the only thing left to carry is sleep. So take one last breath. Let your thoughts drift like petals down a quiet stream. Imagine the road ahead, wide, open, softly humming beneath the stars. No more deadlines, no more timetables, just rest. You're safe here, tucked between ink and saddle, cloud and song. Good night, courier. Rest well,